that Shandong salt merchants might be colluding with Goguryeo, he just hadn't caught them in the act yet. One day, in the camp, Qingxiu received a secret letter addressed to him personally. After reading it, he wasn't surprised, he only gave a cold, dismissive smile. Among the intelligence that had been gathered, it was mentioned that over the past month, many merchants from Goguryeo had appeared in Shandong. Almost all of these merchants interacted with the Shandong Chamber of Commerce. They claimed to be traders, yet were rarely seen bringing goods into the port. There was no need to say more, these merchants were certainly Goguryeo spies, secretly in contact with the Shandong Chamber of Commerce. "Sir, we should set off now." At that moment, Li Tai's voice came from outside the door. They had already stayed here for 3 days. The mission was completed, and the army was about to set out. "Don't rush to leave yet. Send word to General Li and have him come here. I have something I want to ask of him." Qingxiu put away the letter and spoke calmly. Li Tai agreed, and a short while later, Li Ji arrived after being informed. "I don't know what important matter Duke Qing called me here for." Li Ji sat down eagerly, thinking Duke Qing might have more advice for him. Qingxiu smiled and asked, "We brought beans with us, do you now know how to sprout them? How has the result been? Do you even need to ask? Duke Qing, you truly are extraordinary. Just soaking a few beans in water can increase the yield tenfold, and the taste is far better than army rations. To tell you the truth, before, while the fleet was sailing, some soldiers already showed signs of scurvy. After eating the bean sprouts you brought, the effect was immediate." Li Ji spoke with great excitement. At this moment, he was truly convinced of Qingxiu's ability. If Qingxiu hadn't provided a solution at such a crucial time, a large number of non-combat losses would have occurred halfway through the campaign, creating major trouble. This one suggestion had probably saved countless lives, and as a commander who loved his soldiers like his own children, Li Ji's earlier grudges against Qingxiu vanished completely. "That's very good. Be extra cautious at sea. In addition, I'd like to borrow a few men from you, General Li, would that be possible?" Li Ji agreed without hesitation. "No problem. Not just a few, if you need hundreds, it's fine." Qingxiu shook his head. "I don't need hundreds, 4 or 5 at most. But they must be your trusted men, your closest and most reliable soldiers. Aside from them, I don't want anyone else." Li Ji was slightly taken aback, not sure what this meant. He had hundreds of absolute loyalists among his personal guards, so lending a few to Qingxiu was no issue. But seeing Qingxiu's somewhat secretive look, "What is Duke Qing planning to do?" "There's no need for you to worry, General Li. Just know that what I'm doing is for the good of the court. Don't ask anything else." Qingxiu's expression was firm, he wouldn't say another word. "Also, tell your men that if they succeed in this task, their merit will be no less than going on the expedition with you." Li Ji hesitated for a moment, then agreed. "I understand. I'll send them here shortly so you can give them instructions yourself." Qingxiu nodded. He had come alone without his household guards. He didn't trust hiring locals to gather intelligence for him. Only Li Ji's disciplined, unquestioning personal guards could be relied on, at least they were unlikely to have any shared interests with the locals. Li Ji gave an order to the soldiers outside, and before long, 5 strong soldiers came before Qingxiu. "When I am not here, Duke Qing's orders are my orders. No matter what he asks, you must obey without the slightest disobedience. If any of you refuse to follow orders, Duke Qing may execute you under military law at any time. Even if he doesn't, when I return, I will." "Yes, sir." The soldiers answered seriously, none of them doubted Li Ji's orders. After Li Ji left, Qingxiu gestured for them to sit, then placed a row of silver ingots on the table. At the sight of the silver, the soldiers' eyes lit up, but they quickly hid any sign of greed. "Duke Qing, just tell us what you need. Whatever it is, it's our duty, no need for money." "That's right, we'll follow your arrangements." Qingxiu said calmly, "The task must be done, but you've been eating army rations in camp lately. I can't bear it, so why not take some money for a drink?" At this point, refusing would be showing disrespect, so they accepted. "What I want you to do isn't really troublesome. Whether you succeed or not is secondary. What matters most is that it must remain secret." The soldiers all nodded, they understood that clearly. Half an hour later, the 5 men left Qingxiu's tent. After exchanging complex glances, they returned to camp, removed their armor, left their weapons behind, and walked straight out without looking back. Naturally, no one stopped them. At the same time, Qingxiu and Li Tai set out to return to Chang'an. The day after Qingxiu's departure, the Shandong Chamber of Commerce began receiving good news one after another. Almost everyone breathed a sigh of relief. They had thought Qingxiu's visit was to investigate them, the salt merchants. They hadn't expected that he really had just come to reward the army and hadn't made trouble for them. Because of this, the Shandong salt merchants concluded, quite naturally, that the court was afraid of them. If even their worst enemy came to Shandong and didn't dare act rashly, what was there to fear? If Qingxiu knew their real thoughts, he would probably be laughing about it for a year. On the East China Sea, the Tang fleet from Chuyun port in Shandong sailed in great force toward Silla. The size of this fleet was so vast that fishermen along the way were stunned. They had never imagined such a grand and massive force could exist in the world. Especially the Goguryeo fishermen and navy, seeing it at sea frightened them so much they immediately sent reports to their court to raise the alarm. If such a powerful fleet attacked them directly, their navy would be instantly defeated without any chance to resist. When the war report reached the Goguryeo palace, King Go Yanchang, who had been planning multi-front attacks to seize Tang's Liaodong territory, was shocked. He thought his secret dealings with the Shandong salt merchants had been exposed, and the Tang had struck first. Fortunately for him, the fleet had no intention of attacking Goguryeo. They passed through its waters and landed directly in Silla. Still, when the news reached the court, no one in Goguryeo felt any relief. Looking at the marked landing point on the map, Go Yanchang paced in deep worry. If the Tang army launches troops from here, and Liaodong sends an elite force as well, attacking Goguryeo from both sides, that would be real trouble. With Yun Gaesaman dead, it could be said that Goguryeo had lost its military soul. Even the king's fighting spirit had greatly diminished, and he didn't know if they could win against the Tang court at all. If Yun Gaesaman were still alive, he alone could hold off one side of the Tang army. The king thought of how Yun Gaesaman had died tragically in Tang territory, without even a body brought back. All they had was a brief explanation from Tang, assassination of a duke. His heart was both sorrowful and furious. Your Majesty, the troops we're using to attack Beech, why don't we recall them first? One minister suggested. But someone immediately opposed him. How can we withdraw when the army is in the heat of battle at the front? Besides, the battle line is already pressing on their capital. If we take it, we can demand indemnities and land. Nonsense! The Tang army is watching like a tiger from behind. If the royal city falls, even if you swallow all of Beech, it's useless. But so many soldiers have died to get this far. If we just pull back, won't that chill the hearts of the troops? Gao Yanchang grew irritated at their arguing and barked, enough. My decision is made. First, recall the soldiers from the front line to guard the rear defenses. We'll watch the Tang army's next move before making further plans. If anyone opposes, send them straight to the front to face the Tang army. Once he said that, all objections fell silent. Risking one's life just to win an argument was hardly worth it. Even Li Ji himself probably didn't know that simply sailing openly through Goguryeo waters had directly scared Goguryeo into contracting its battle lines and preparing defenses, while also saving the dying Beech in the process. The ship stayed in Silla only a few days before Li Ji decided to set out quickly, aiming to reach Japan at top speed. This was all because 3 days earlier, he had received a letter of surrender from the Japanese emperor. The same emperor who had previously shouted about forcing Tang to cede land and pay reparations had now completely changed his tone. In the letter, like a clown, he begged for mercy again and again, claiming that the earlier attack on a Tang trade convoy was the reckless act of certain ministers, and had nothing to do with him. To show sincerity, the emperor even sent 3 severed heads with the letter, saying they were the ringleaders and had been executed to atone. He begged the Tang army to withdraw and not attack Japan itself. Li Ji didn't take the letter seriously at all. Killing 3 ringleaders? Even if the emperor tied himself up and sent himself over, Li Ji still had to attack Japan. With the army already at the doorstep, could a single letter make him turn back? If Tang backed off now, anyone could provoke Tang at will. At worst, they could just kill a few people to apologize when Tang's army arrived, turning Tang's military actions into a joke. The fleet stood ready at the port, and Li Ji, on the flagship, gazed out over the endless sea. For some reason, the usually clear and sunny waters were now gloomy. The sky was overcast, not a trace of sunlight breaking through, and the waves were rougher than usual. Li Ji knew nothing about the sea and didn't take these abnormalities seriously. Bring the Japanese envoys up. At his order, soldiers dragged forward 2 trembling Japanese messengers. The short, unimpressive envoys were forced to kneel, immediately crying and begging for their lives. General, spare us. We're only delivering a letter, we don't know anything. In war between states, envoys aren't killed. There's no point in making things hard for us. Their wailing annoyed Li Ji so much that he kicked them over in disgust. Now you know envoys aren't killed when disaster strikes? Back when you murdered our Tang envoys, did you think so carefully? You killed nearly 100 merchants and sailors from that convoy. Killing just you 2 before the war even starts is already merciful. Li Ji signaled with his eyes, and the soldiers shoved the envoys to the rail. Blades flashed. Their heads rolled into the raging sea, and their bodies were kicked in after them, quickly devoured by the churning fish below. Set sail! Li Ji's order rang out. The anchors were raised, and to the sound of blaring horns, the fleet rode the waves eastward. Li Ji was full of confidence, but he didn't notice that the waves were getting stronger, the clouds darker. As the ships advanced, the weather worsened, thunder cracked, and torrential rain began to fall. What's going on? A moment ago, Li Ji had been in high spirits. Now, in the downpour, he was forced to retreat to his cabin. But the rain and howling winds lashed the fleet mercilessly, battering these ships that had never faced the ocean's fury. Sailors quickly realized something was wrong. As the wind drove the ships out of control, they were forced to lower the sails. Hurry! If the wind gets worse, we'll be blown off course. Look, the third ship's already veered off, and its mast is broken. Get below deck. The waves are too big, stay here and you'll be swept into the sea. The mad wind and relentless waves pounded the hulls. In moments, the formation was in complete disarray. Ships still waiting in port hurriedly lowered their sails, none dared go out. But those already at sea could not be saved, only left to drift helplessly. Even in his cabin, Li Ji could hear the deafening crashes of waves slamming the hull. The ship was breaking in multiple places, and even water was seeping into his cabin. What the hell is this? This wind's nothing like what I saw at Chuyun port. Li Ji slammed his fist on the table, but before he could react, a massive jolt sent him and his guards sprawling, the world spinning. A towering wave struck, smashing a huge hole in the weakened hull. Seawater poured in. Send orders to bring all ships back to port. Li Ji struggled to his feet, but before he could finish, a wave capsized the entire ship. The massive, reinforced flagship was crushed under the full force of the sea storm. 7 or 8 ships following behind were also smashed to pieces. The storm raged on, the rain and wind venting their endless fury. Even those on shore dared not approach the swollen sea, keeping far back. They could only watch the shattered remains of the fleet bob in the waves. It's over? No one could believe their eyes, this nearly invincible fleet destroyed by the storm. Before long, no one knew exactly how long, the wild, raging winds and torrential rain over the sea finally began to calm. The dark clouds dispersed, and sunlight once again shone down on the sea's surface. The shimmering waves returned to their former calm, as if that howling, earth-shaking storm had never happened. Only the shattered wreckage scattered across the water silently told of what had just occurred. Only then did the people of Silla on the shore, along with Tang soldiers who had not gone to sea, cautiously approach the coastline, their hearts still pounding. Splash! A large wave surged in, bringing with it heaps of broken ship debris, and many Tang soldiers' bodies in armor, washed up onto the sand. Pitiful, these strong soldiers had not died on the battlefield for their country, but had instead lost their lives to a sudden, inexplicable storm at sea. Come give us a hand, there's a survivor here. I've got one too. Someone's still alive, don't just stand there. Get more people over here. The few of us can't handle this alone. When they found that among the corpses there were many still alive, everyone rushed to rescue anyone who might still be breathing. On the noisy beach, a Silla fisherman slipped away toward a corner of the shore where no one was watching, hoping to find something valuable among the wreckage to take home. What a shame about such fine ships, but then again, the Tang army was just too unlucky, heading out to sea only to hit a typhoon right away. Muttering to himself, the fisherman pried at the wreckage. Suddenly, a wet hand reached out from under the debris and grabbed his ankle. The fisherman fell back in shock, terrified, trying to kick the hand away, but it only gripped tighter, with such strength that he couldn't help crying out in panic. Don't yell, damn it. Hurry and get someone to pull me out. Pushing aside the broken planks, a face appeared, mostly hidden by tangled hair. It was Li Ji. Back in Chang'an, Qingxiu devoted most of his time and energy to the hot spring villa project. He built it to the most luxurious standards he could imagine, intending to make it a landmark. The villagers cooperated fully. Whenever Qingxiu gave an order, they worked day and night. Of course, this was also because of his promise. After the villa was completed, 1/10 of its yearly revenue would be given to the villagers as payment. And as long as the villa existed, they would continue to receive this money until they no longer wished to work for him. Even just 1/10 of a year's revenue was a fortune beyond what the villagers could earn in 10 lifetimes. With that incentive, they were eager to work, sometimes even more eager than Qingxiu himself to see it finished quickly. As progress sped up, Hou Yuanhing, who had always begrudged this project, grew increasingly jealous. He often lingered around the outskirts of Sanchuan village, envious and scheming. One day, while Qingxiu was inspecting the sanitation of the hot spring pool's foundation, a household guard came to report. That second son of Duke Lu is here again. He almost got into a fight with the villagers just now, should we drive him off? Qingxiu frowned. If this kid could put that determination into anything else, Hou Junji wouldn't look down on him so much. Let him be. As long as he doesn't enter the villa grounds, he can do whatever he wants. Hou Yuanhing probably didn't even realize that by making a fool of himself like a jumping monkey, he was actually helping advertise the villa with his high-profile presence. The more he acted like this, the more other nobles became curious about what was inside that could attract him so much. Before long, another guard arrived with a message from the palace, asking Qingxiu to come immediately. The imperial messenger said it's extremely urgent. His Majesty wants Duke Qing to come as soon as possible. It was rare for Li Er to summon him in such haste, and Qingxiu had a good idea what it was about. You take over here, Qingxiu said, tossing what was in his hand to a guard and ordering a carriage to be readied. It could only mean something had gone wrong with the naval expedition. Li Er sat with furrowed brows, staring silently at the battle reports spread across the table. The ministers said nothing. They could sense he was struggling to contain his anger. Even the hot-headed Wei Zheng wisely kept his mouth shut, a rare thing. When the doors finally opened and Duke Qing entered, the heavy tension in the room eased slightly. Your Majesty, I'm not too late, am I? No, Duke Qing, please sit, Li Er nodded. Duke Qing, He hesitated for a long time, too ashamed to speak of the disaster. Without a battle fought, half the fleet had been destroyed by the storm, with countless casualties. Li Ji had nearly lost his life to the waves. Since the founding of the Tang, when had they ever suffered such a defeat? Saying it aloud felt humiliating. Of course, Qingxiu already knew. General Li Ji is still alive, isn't he? Li Er was startled. How do you know that Mao Gong, He suddenly realized that Qingxiu must already have a full grasp of the situation. Thinking back, before the war began, Qingxiu had repeatedly warned him to be cautious, especially about storms at sea. It seemed he had foreseen this outcome from the start. Qingxiu remained calm. This can't really be called General Li's fault, he's never experienced the dangers of the sea. If your Majesty had been willing to take more time to think carefully back then, and listen more to my advice, the result would never have been like this. Li Er could only sigh. This time he had indeed been too hasty, even rushing Li Ji to convert large tower ships into warships instead of building proper ones. Now he saw just how far-sighted Qingxiu had been, predicting the outcome from the beginning, exactly as he said, the fleet destroyed by waves. But I cannot bear to let those Japanese rebels go unpunished, especially after our merchant sailors were killed. There must be an answer. Li Er's frustration was clear. Your Majesty, I've never said your decision to destroy Japan was wrong. I only kept reminding you not to underestimate the challenge, make full preparations before launching the attack. But with ships like the ones Li Ji hastily put together, they could never withstand the waves. Even with perfect preparation, you couldn't get past a typhoon at sea. Li Er suddenly thought of something, snapping his head up to look straight at Qingxiu. Duke Qing, do you have a way to counter the waves? Li Er realized that what Qingxiu had been telling him was to make better preparations, not to give up the attack. Didn't that mean he might have a way to help? As soon as those words were spoken, everyone's eyes turned toward Qingxiu. Duke Qing even has a way for this? Could it be just hindsight wisdom? This is not an easy problem. Exactly. This time it's not about facing an enemy that can be outwitted, this is the wind and waves at sea, something you'd have to fight head-on. I think Duke Qing probably doesn't have any real idea. Although these ministers knew Qingxiu always had the most methods, that was when dealing with living, breathing enemies. Could he really have a way to stop waves that could easily destroy an entire fleet? Waves are a force of nature. With mere human ability, it is absolutely impossible to resist nature directly. Qingxiu could see what they were thinking. Instead of wondering how to calm the waves, it would be more effective to build ships that can withstand them. That made everyone shake their heads. Duke Qing, the ships for this expedition were already built by Jiangnan craftsmen with the best materials and techniques, there's no way to make them stronger. Even Li Er thought that was unrealistic. If the wind at sea could destroy ships so easily, then they would need to make ships at least 5 times stronger than the current ones to resist it effectively. Wei Zheng couldn't help interjecting, unless you build them entirely of steel and stone, otherwise. But that was pure fantasy, ships made entirely of steel couldn't be rowed or sailed by human power at all. Seeing their discouraged faces, Qingxiu couldn't help mocking, I haven't even told you the method yet, and you're already rushing to reject it? If you really think this battle can't be fought, then fine, everyone can just disband, and from now on let Japanese pirates plunder Tang merchant ships at will, how about that? That shut them up instantly. Qingxiu had long been annoyed by this kind of person. When asked for ideas, they had none, but when others proposed something, they only denied it. Li Er coughed lightly, sweeping his gaze over each of them. The ministers immediately shut their mouths and signaled they would follow Duke Qing's arrangements completely. Duke Qing, no matter what method you have, just propose it. As long as you think it's effective, I'll have them carry it out immediately. Li Er made the decision without hesitation. Qingxiu raised an eyebrow. Truly? Li Er patted his chest in assurance. A ruler does not go back on his word, especially not in front of all the ministers. I will not break my promise. From now on, all matters of the fleet are fully in your hands. That was exactly what Qingxiu wanted to hear. Good. Then, Your Majesty, please summon all the shipbuilders from Jiangnan to Chang'an. I will personally tell them how to build the ships. Hearing this, Changsun Wuji glanced over and quietly asked Qingxiu, son-in-law, you even know how to build ships? When the time comes, you'll all understand. Seeing Qingxiu's lazy expression, Li Er strangely felt reassured. In his memory, whenever Qingxiu wore this laid-back look, the matter was almost certainly in the bag. Good. Li Er agreed without hesitation. Qingxiu yawned, stood up, and headed for the palace doors. Li Er grew anxious. And later? What happens next? Later? Later I'll go home and sleep. It'll take days for them to arrive in Chang'an. What's the point of sitting here? Qingxiu waved his hand, leaving everyone speechless. Once Qingxiu had left, Li Er sat back down, but without Qingxiu there, his composure faded. Faced with something that wasn't guaranteed, without Qingxiu present, it was hard for him to feel fully confident. Also, send my order to Li Ji to return for now. This matter wasn't his fault, he should not be blamed. Li Er knew this would likely leave a deep shadow in Li Ji's heart. While other generals boasted countless victories, he had been defeated without even a battle, an enormous humiliation. Li Er didn't want Li Ji to sink into despair, so this was also a gesture of encouragement. After the ministers left, Li Er suddenly realized it was already after the start of winter. Stepping outside the palace, the first snow had already fallen. The white expanse made him think again of those soldiers who had died tragically in the waves, and a pang of sadness gripped his heart. Such a pity for those men, they should have been winning glory on the battlefield. Li Er muttered quietly, momentarily lost in thought. Your Majesty? Li Er was startled by a soft voice calling to him, turning to see a eunuch looking at him nervously. This servant has been calling you for a while, are you feeling unwell? Just distracted. What is it? It's almost New Year, and all the vassal princes will come to the capital to present tribute. Shouldn't we start preparing? Li Er suddenly remembered, this was indeed a major event. Make the preparations early. Don't let the matter at the front affect it. Also, treat all those who died at sea as if they fell in battle, and compensate their families accordingly. He waved his hand for the eunuch to get on with it. In addition, there's one more thing. I don't know if Your Majesty remembers, over a month ago, there were envoys claiming to be from Tibet. If the eunuch hadn't mentioned it, Li Er would have forgotten them entirely. What about them? They made their 10th request to see Your Majesty just yesterday. It wasn't that Li Er was deliberately ignoring them, it was just that so many urgent matters had piled up lately, he had nearly forgotten. Let them come see me, Li Er nodded. Sangbuza fidgeted uncomfortably with the official robes he was wearing as the eunuch led him into the palace. Remember, when you meet His Majesty, follow exactly the etiquette I taught you, not a single thing less. The eunuch instructed carefully. Sangbuza, clearly uninterested, only nodded in perfunctory agreement. Why can't I wear my own clothes? That's our Tibetan ceremonial attire, you know. The eunuch nearly laughed, those patched beast-hide robes looked like they were about to fall apart, and he was still thinking about them? Forget that for now. Just don't forget what I told you. As Sangbuza looked around the palace, his eyes fell on Li Er, seated in the great hall. Li Er had never seen a Tibetan with skin so dark red and strange-looking, and he examined him with curiosity. Sangbuza, for his part, was equally curious about the true face of the Tang Emperor, and the two of them ended up staring directly at each other. Li Er hadn't expected Sangbuza to be so lacking in manners, and his expression darkened. The eunuch panicked and quickly shoved Sangbuza. What are you doing? Greetings, Your Majesty. Sangbuza suddenly snapped to attention, hurriedly speaking awkward Mandarin, while making a stiff and comical bow. Tibetan envoys, presenting native specialties such as Thangka paintings, hide drums, and bone flutes, all top-quality goods from our homeland. The eunuch carefully carried a tray of tribute forward for Li Er to inspect. These instruments were nothing rare for the Tang dynasty, but for resource-poor and handicraft-limited Tibet, they were as precious as gold. Even our king, Songtsen Gampo, has only 3 sets. Now we bring one to offer to your majesty, hoping you will like it. Sangbuza's face beamed with eagerness. Li Er, not wanting to hurt his pride, casually picked up a hide drum to examine. The material is rather unique. Hee, of course. This is made from the skin taken from the chest of our most devout priest, the place closest to the gods. Playing music on this drum will earn you the god's blessing. Li Er's smile instantly froze. Chest skin? This is human skin. Sangbuza nodded repeatedly. Exactly. A drum made from animal hide is not worthy to be presented to you. Li Er immediately tossed the drum back onto the tray. Thinking about the fact that all these instruments were made of hide and bone, he instantly concluded that this so-called Tibetan kingdom was nothing more than a tribal clan, perhaps even more barbaric than the Turks. This time, what do you seek in return for your tribute? Speak freely. Sangbuza, completely unreserved, said, Our king, Songtsen Gampo, wishes to marry a beautiful Tang princess. To bind our nations in eternal brotherhood. Hee, if it's for marriage alliance, I've always been. Wait, what did you say? Li Er's smile vanished. Brotherhood? Yes, exactly. Brotherhood. Our Khan marries your daughter as a concubine, how is that not brotherhood? Sangbuza even spoke as if it were perfectly reasonable. Li Er's face darkened. First, if a Tang princess marries over for alliance, she must be the primary wife. If she has children, they must be first in the line of succession. Second, to marry a princess, you must bow to Tang and pledge loyalty for generations, never to rebel. At these conditions, Sangbuza looked utterly incredulous. Bow to Tang? Impossible. The Tang dynasty has not defeated us, why should we bow? In Tibet, when two tribes intermarry, that is an alliance of brothers. If the emperor feels shortchanged, the great king's daughter can also marry over. Li Er shook his head. He felt this envoy was completely unreasonable. They were simply talking past each other. Just a mere tribal clan, likely unable even to forge iron, yet wanting to be an equal ally of Tang? No marriage. You may leave. Tell your king, if he can meet these two conditions, we can marry. If not, don't come again. Li Er hadn't expected to waste time on something so foolish, and rose in displeasure to leave. Your Majesty, how can you treat us like this? I crossed thousands of snowy miles to reach Tang. Along the way, many in our party died of exhaustion, why won't you give us a marriage alliance? Sangbuza was agitated, and even tried to step forward to argue with Li Er, only to be blocked at once by guards. I still wanted to leave you some dignity. Leave quietly and give up this foolish hope. If you still don't know what's good for you, be careful not to lose even this little bit of face. The chief eunuch, impatient, gave a nod to the two guards. Honored envoy, please. The two guards unceremoniously grabbed Sangbuza and forced him out of the palace. Not only that, the entire Tibetan delegation was ordered to leave Chang'an within 12 hours, or be expelled by force. No matter how unwilling Sangbuza was, faced with drawn blades, he could only comply. Bitterly, he and his entourage packed their bags and slunk out of Chang'an. Envoy, what will we do now? We failed our mission, the great king will surely punish us severely. One attendant looked terrified. Before departing, they had promised Songtsen Gampo they would bring the princess back. Instead, they were driven out in disgrace. Sangbuza's face was iron dark as he ground his teeth. That Tang emperor doesn't yet know who he's provoked? Don't worry. The great king is not unreasonable. Since they won't send the princess, we'll just take her ourselves. Let the Tang emperor see the might of Tibet. Recently, Qingxiu had not gone to court as usual. He spent most of his time shut in his room, not allowing anyone to enter, except, of course, his wife when it was her duty at night. This even made Su Xiaochun suspect that perhaps, after arranging for all 6 wives to battle him in rotation recently, she had overdone it and worn him out. She even came to the study window, trying to peek inside, only to see Qingxiu writing furiously. Before him was a tall stack of white paper sheets. Could it be? I really wore him out. Su Xiaochun wondered if she should let him rest for a couple of nights to recover. Since you're here, come in. Why are you still eavesdropping outside the window? Qingxiu's voice came from inside. He had long since noticed Su Xiaochun peeking. Husband, I was just worried about you. Su Xiaochun pushed open the door, stepping in with a concerned look. The desk was piled high with sheets covered in drawings, several stacks taller than the bookshelf. Clearly, Qingxiu had been focused on these for days. She couldn't imagine how he could draw them without being able to see. Husband, am I disturbing you? Qingxiu set down his brush, placed the last sheet on the little mountain of paper, and grinned. I've just finished them all. Su Xiaochun glanced curiously at the paper but couldn't make sense of it. It looked like internal structural diagrams of something, with dense measurements marked, neither pictures nor text. It was the first time she'd ever seen such a thing. Qingxiu casually explained, "This is called a blueprint. Simply put, it's dissecting an object in detail, drawing it piece by piece on paper, then having craftsmen build it according to the exact proportions. So this is what's called a blueprint? I saw craftsmen's blueprints when I was little, but none were this complex and grand." Su Xiaochun frowned, unable to understand them. Naturally, such complex blueprints would take even top craftsmen days to study, let alone someone like her. "So, husband, you've been in seclusion studying all this time just to draw these blueprints?" Su Xiaochun immediately understood. Qingxiu nodded, a faint smile on his face. With the current skills of those shipbuilders in Jiangnan, the sturdiness of the ships they build is limited. But if they follow my blueprint exactly, they will be absolutely safe even in storms. Although Su Xiaochun didn't understand shipbuilding, she knew Qingxiu never boasted. If he said it could be done, there would definitely be no mishaps. Even though she couldn't understand the structure of the hull, she could still read the numbers and measurements marked on it. The total length of the hull is 30 zhang, the height? My heavens! Husband, is this real? When Su Xiaochun saw the hull's dimensions clearly, she was instantly shocked. If it were built exactly according to these measurements, it would be almost like a moving fortress at sea. Forget sea winds, even crashing into an iceberg might not damage it. Su Xiaochun couldn't imagine that such a massive ship could be built with a wooden structure. Can wood at sea really hold up such a huge hull? Wouldn't it collapse during construction? Qingxiu smiled slightly. If you just piled up materials, it would be absolutely impossible to support such a massive hull. But if you use the structure reasonably, building such a large hull is not difficult. Su Xiaochun truly didn't understand, so she pouted. "All right. Whatever husband says must be right." Just then, a voice came from outside the door. "Duke, there's a visitor who claims to have an unusual identity and says he wants to meet you in person." "What kind of unusual identity?" Qingxiu raised his brows. In Chang'an City, people who could claim an unusual status before him were very few. "He claims to be the second son of the Duke of Lu, Hou Yuanheng, and says he has a big business deal to discuss with you." Hearing this, Qingxiu almost laughed out loud. He thought it might be some important figure, but it turned out to be that self-important fool. This fellow didn't even qualify to inherit the duke's title, yet he dared to call himself unusual, truly laughable. If this had happened while Qingxiu was still racking his brains over the blueprints, he would surely have impatiently thrown the man out. But now that the drawings were done, he was in a good mood, and he was also curious what this man wanted. "Let him wait for me in the courtyard pavilion." This was the first time Hou Yuanheng had ever been treated like this. He came to visit, yet no tea or water was served, no servants waited on him. They didn't even let him into the main hall, just made him wait in the outdoor pavilion. What kind of reception was this? Does your master always treat guests like this? With no place to vent his anger, Hou Yuanheng grabbed a passing servant boy and asked with a face full of rage. "Step aside." The boy ignored him, turned away, and walked off, nearly driving Hou Yuanheng mad on the spot. "Young Master Hou, how we receive guests depends on the person. Some people deserve to be received in the grand hall, and some. I'd consider it bad luck to let them into my duke's residence." Qingxiu's slightly lazy voice came, and Hou Yuanheng quickly put away his anger. Forcing an awkward smile, he turned to Qingxiu. "Duke Qing, it's been a long time, I've missed you greatly." Qingxiu looked at him with a half-smile. "Do you miss me, or do you miss Sanchuan village that I bought?" Hou Yuanheng's face twitched, then he laughed loudly. "That wasn't very fair of you, Duke Qing. You knew there was an underground hot spring in Sanchuan village, but without telling me, you went ahead and bought the land. You really know how to do business in Chang'an." "Young Master Hou, don't blame me for being blunt. Even if you knew about the hot spring, so what? Even if you wanted to develop it, you couldn't guarantee you'd bring the hot spring to the surface within several years, let alone with your terrible business sense." Qingxiu's words were like a slap to the face. He didn't leave Hou Yuanheng any dignity at all. Hou Yuanheng's face turned red, then a shade like pig liver, furious but unable to speak out. His expression shifted between anger and forced smiles, making him look like a clown. "Hee. Let's not talk about the past. Actually, I have a business deal that might help you develop the hot spring. Are you interested?" Qingxiu slowly sat down. "Let's hear it, though I doubt it's reliable." Hou Yuanheng put on a solemn expression. "I want to use the Duke of Lu's connections and resources to jointly develop the hot spring with you. With my father's status and network, we can make the hot spring resort famous in the shortest time. It will be a win-win for both of us." Qingxiu sighed a little. "Young Master Hou, don't be offended if I'm too straightforward. There's a reason your father looks down on you." Hou Yuanheng's anger broke through. "What did you say? Aren't I also the son of a duke?" Do you think my status is just for show? My father, the Duke of Lu, is a founding minister, respected in court for many years, and even His Majesty gives him special favor, and not because of trickery. After hearing this, Qingxiu couldn't hold back his laughter. This fool really thought Hou Junji was second only to the emperor in the entire court. Young Master Hou, with your intelligence, I doubt you can understand me, and I don't want to waste time with you. You may leave. And remember, stop having absurd dreams. Don't cause trouble for your father, he'd be lucky enough just to be spared that. Hou Yuanhing could hardly believe his ears. In all his life, apart from his father, this was the first time someone had dared insult him to his face. Qingxiu! You! Before he could finish, the household guards nearby all turned their sharp gazes on him. These men, brimming with killing intent, didn't even need to move, just standing there was enough to create an overwhelming pressure. And now several of those murderous stares focused on him at once. Hou Yuanhing instantly fell silent, almost unable to speak. See the guest out. At Qingxiu's command, 2 towering guards stepped up to him, staring coldly without politeness. Please, young Master Hou. After being escorted out of the residence, Hou Yuanhing's anger flared to the extreme. That bastard. How dare you insult me like that? Who do you think you are? I came here to negotiate out of courtesy, and you think I'm letting you off the hook? Burning with rage, Hou Yuanhing swore to himself. No matter what means he had to use, he must seize the hot spring land in Sanchuan village. Otherwise, he would become the laughingstock of all Chang'an, and his dream of inheriting the title would be nothing but a distant fantasy. Just you wait, Qingxiu. With a final resentful glance at the Grand Duke's residence, Hou Yuanhing left, full of hatred. After finishing the blueprints, the grace period Li Er gave to Qingxiu had not yet ended. Naturally, he treated this time as his own vacation days, relaxing in comfort. From time to time, he would stroll to the not yet completed hot spring villa to give on-site instructions. Or he would fish by the lake to pass the time, then at night explore the origins and pleasures of life with his wife. By contrast, Li Er was so busy his feet could kick the back of his head, working day and night reviewing memorials and worrying about receiving various vassal princes. Compared to Qingxiu, he was simply a pure workhorse. But these leisurely days passed quickly. After the Jiangnan shipbuilders finally arrived in Chang'an, having traveled a long and bumpy road, Li Er immediately sent someone to inform Qingxiu and asked how he planned to proceed. When Li Er saw the several sweating household guards behind Qingxiu, each carrying a bundle as tall as a small mountain, he looked at Qingxiu with eager anticipation. Duke Qing, is this your preparation? Of course. Qingxiu waved his hand, and the guards, as if pardoned, quickly put down their bundles. The shipbuilders didn't understand. What did these big bundles have to do with them? At Qingxiu's order, the guards opened the packages, directly revealing the densely drawn blueprints inside. Li Er had thought the bundles would contain something exciting, but seeing them, he immediately felt a little disappointed. What use were these piles of stone-like things? But of course, there were people who recognized their value. As soon as the blueprints were revealed, the eldest of the shipwrights immediately came forward, carefully picking up one to examine. Duke Qing, these papers. These are the blueprints I drew during this time, for building warships. Hearing this, Li Er was puzzled. These shipbuilders all have their own methods for building ships, they don't need blueprints at all. Qingxiu sneered. Ships built by them? Haven't you already seen the results, Your Majesty? In front of ocean waves, they're no better than paper. These words made the shipbuilders displeased. To them, it sounded like cursing their ancestors to their faces. Duke Qing, perhaps we can't match you in other matters, but shipbuilding is our ancestral craft, passed down for generations without ever failing. That's right. We're not bragging, but you could search the entire Tang Empire and not find shipbuilders with skills like ours. If we can't resist the sea winds, that's just the limit of human strength. Hearing their nonsense, Qingxiu grew impatient. Casually, he said, Gentlemen, I thought you'd be ashamed when you learned your ships were destroyed by waves. But your first reaction is to act as if it's only natural? You still think your inherited skills are perfect. If your ancestors had thought that way, Jiangnan would probably still be sailing in dugout canoes. This left the shipbuilders completely speechless. I understand. I understand. The old shipwright who had been studying the blueprint suddenly shouted excitedly, breaking the silence. Amazing, truly amazing. So ships can be built this way. His hands trembled as he held the blueprint. Shuffling to Qingxiu, before the latter could speak, he even bent his knees to kneel. Don't do that. Qingxiu reacted quickly, pulling him up before he could kneel. Just speak. Why kneel? The old man's eyes were moist with tears. Duke Qing, did you draw this? How did you make it? Li Er was also curious. Yes, Duke Qing, your eyes can't see. How did you draw these blueprints? Your Majesty, are you focusing on the wrong thing? Never mind other matters, just say, can these ships be built from the blueprints? The old shipwright nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely. I guarantee it with my life. If there's any flaw in the finished ship, you can take my head. Qingxiu frowned. No need for that. I don't want your head. No, Duke Qing. The blueprints are so clear, the structure so precise, if I can't build it, I deserve death. Only then did Li Er realize how stunning Qingxiu's preparations were. Let me introduce you. This is Yang Jui, Jiangnan's chief shipwright. In the previous dynasty, his ancestors built ships for the imperial court. At this, Yang Jui looked embarrassed. My forebears once built those massive pleasure ships for Emperor Yang of Sui, which harmed the nation. I still feel ashamed, better not to mention it. I see. No wonder such an experienced master could grasp the secrets in the blueprints. You brats, do you realize how disrespectful you were to Duke Qing just now? Was anything he said wrong? Relying on your inherited craft without ever thinking to change, you'll be eliminated sooner or later. Seeing their master so convinced by Qingxiu's work, the others had nothing left to say. They finally realized Qingxiu had the right to scold them. Please forgive us, Duke Qing, we were rude. Qingxiu didn't waste words. Look at the blueprints first. The group immediately gathered around. Although the pile of blueprints was as tall as a small hill, none of the craftsmen minded. They busied themselves studying and analyzing each one, completely absorbed. Li Er was curious and asked softly, Duke Qing, you also understand shipbuilding? Although Yang Jui seemed humble before Qingxiu, in truth he was extremely proud and looked down on all his peers. For him to submit instantly showed how valuable these designs were. I know a little, enough to build ships that can withstand the waves, Qingxiu said vaguely. The whole structure he had drawn was exactly that of the later treasure ships built during Zheng He's voyages to the western seas. Before the steam age, they were the pinnacle of wooden shipbuilding. In 7 voyages, they endured fierce storms without damage, almost always returning with the entire crew intact. This showed their sturdiness. Crossing to Japan and conquering the Wa Kingdom would be effortless. The more the shipwrights studied the blueprints, the more their respect for Qingxiu grew. Unlike their simple method of piling up materials for strength, these designs used precise interlocking structures, each part supporting the others. In limited space, every material bore its maximum load. With just a few pieces arranged in this way, the strength could be dozens of times greater than before. They couldn't help but sigh. After a lifetime of building ships, they had only now learned that ships could be made this way. Although Li Er couldn't understand the blueprints, by carefully examining the words between the lines on some of them, he could vaguely grasp their meaning. After the hull is completed, it can hold more than 10 times the number of people compared to before? Is this real? Li Er's face was full of shock. He truly could not imagine how sturdy a ship would have to be to hold so many people. You have to know, increasing the number of people isn't just about adding more passengers. The corresponding food, water, waste facilities, all would multiply accordingly, and in the end, that would be an unimaginably huge supporting system. If the population increases tenfold, the supporting facilities would have to increase by more than tenfold. This means the whole space expansion would also have to far exceed tenfold. Once the hull is built, Your Majesty can see for yourself, Qingxiu said with full confidence. He believed this treasure ship would definitely not disappoint him. It can be done, Your Majesty. Yang Jui nodded firmly to Li Er. Duke Qing, we need to take these blueprints back to Jiangnan, since only there do we have the matching shipyards and the relatively lower-ranking shipbuilders. Qingxiu didn't mind. No problem. Just make sure not to lose the blueprints. Seeing Qingxiu's confident expression and Yang Jui's eager face, Li Er immediately agreed. Start construction. No matter how much it costs, just report it to the court. Whatever difficulties you face, the court will solve them, don't worry. Thank you, Your Majesty. Thinking about building such a massive and tightly structured ship with his own hands, Yang Jui couldn't help but clench his fists in excitement. From now on, his name would be recorded in history alongside this giant ship. Silla, a port somewhere in the Far East. Li Ji sat in front of the repaired shipyard, gazing at the calm sea in the distance. One of his arms was wrapped in bandages and slung across his chest. Although he had multiple serious injuries, fortunately they were all treatable. However, after that shipwreck, Li Ji's once talkative nature had completely changed. Now, Li Ji spent his days in silence, most of the time staring blankly at the sea, and no one knew what he was thinking. General, an urgent decree from His Majesty in Chang'an has arrived. A captain came to Li Ji's side, carefully holding out a document. Li Ji nodded slightly, took it with one hand, and laboriously opened it to read. "General, what is His Majesty's order?" the captain asked nervously. Having lost before even fighting, and with so many expensive warships lost, he was deeply worried Li Ji would be severely punished. "Don't worry. His Majesty did not blame me. He said the failure this time was not my fault, and told me to stay here in Silla for now. The campaign against Wa will still be led by me as commander." Li Ji's voice was dry. If Li Er had heavily blamed him, perhaps Li Ji's heart would have felt a little better. The captain breathed a sigh of relief. "General, don't worry. Once we regroup, we will surely destroy Wa and use their emperor's blood to honor the brothers who died in the sea. How is the recovery of the brothers' bodies?" The captain was immediately at a loss for words, stammering for a long time before answering. Only a small number of bodies were recovered. Most sank to the bottom of the sea. He didn't dare say that most of the recovered bodies had been horribly eaten by fish. Li Ji said nothing more, just let out a long sigh. "If Wa is not destroyed, I will never return to the Tang, nor set foot on Tang soil again in my life." Li Ji had never so strongly wished to destroy a country, not for glory, but for the thousands of strong Tang soldiers who died beneath the waves. Unfortunately, when he had set out, Qingxiu had reminded him again and again, but he had treated it as empty words. "General, there is one more matter. Yesterday Wa sent an envoy to deliver a letter. He has already been detained by the brothers. Whether he is killed or not depends entirely on your word." The captain's face was filled with killing intent. Li Ji snorted coldly. "Are those Wa dwarfs trying to use this opportunity to humiliate me?" Without looking, he could guess that the letter would be full of arrogance and mockery. "General, you may be mistaken. They sent the envoy to seek peace." This answer greatly surprised Li Ji. He stared at the captain. "What did you say?" The captain immediately handed over another letter. "General, please see for yourself." Li Ji opened it in puzzlement. It was written in both Chinese characters and Wa language. The letter was full of praise for the might of the Tang heavenly soldiers, and humbly pleaded for the general's forgiveness. Along with the letter came some gold and silver as a thank you gift. They say if the general is willing to withdraw troops, they will give even more. Li Ji could not understand, why had the Wa people suddenly become so humble? Separated by the sea, he couldn't touch them, so why were they acting like frightened mice? The captain chuckled. "General, you may not know. A few days ago, right after the sea winds destroyed our warships, those Wa dwarfs mocked us from across the sea. Our brothers didn't tolerate it. They borrowed some small boats from the Silla people, and on calm, sunny days, they went out to target the Wa fishing and merchant ships. They even captured an official. This scared those fools half to death." Li Ji instantly understood. His men had turned into pirates, frightening the Wa people into submission. The Wa had thought that with Tang warships unable to come, they could rest easy. But they hadn't expected that even small raids could make their days miserable. Yet thinking about how the sea winds would eventually calm, Li Ji felt even more regret. If only he had listened to Qingxiu's advice and chosen a calm, sunny day to avoid the sea winds when setting sail. Enough, wishful thinking is useless. Li Ji gathered his thoughts. Tell the brothers to do their best, kill as many Wa slaves as possible to accompany the brothers in the sea. For every Wa head brought back, I will personally reward them from my own pocket. The court's rewards are separate. The captain was overjoyed, not for the reward, but because Li Ji was no longer mired in the pain of defeat. He still had a strong desire for revenge. "Rest assured, General. In the future, if we see a Wa ship at sea, not one of them will return alive." With Li Er's arrangements, the shipbuilding proceeded smoothly. But since the location was in Jiangnan, Qingxiu could not follow all the time. He couldn't possibly move to Jiangnan just to supervise shipbuilding. Even if he wanted to, his wives would never agree. Anyway, shipbuilding was slow work, so Qingxiu entrusted everything to Yang Jui, whom he judged to be reliable. "If there's any problem, immediately send a fast rider to inform me. Just remember one thing. Every part of the ship's structure, even a single number, must be followed exactly as in the blueprints." Before leaving, Qingxiu solemnly reminded Yang Jui. Yang Jui naturally gave his full assurance. He neither dared nor would ever make random changes. This man practically treated Qingxiu's blueprints like sacred scripture bestowed by the gods, not daring to show the slightest bit of disrespect. The matter of the Wa conquest was set aside for now, but no one in the entire court had forgotten it. They were all eagerly waiting for Qingxiu's great ship to be completed and sweep across to crush the Wa. Of course, during these days Qingxiu had truly become completely free. He couldn't be bothered with the court's trivial affairs, and instead put all his energy into building the hot spring villa. He clearly remembered that before the end of the year, various vassal lords would enter the capital to present tribute. At that time, his hot spring villa could use the occasion for grand publicity. It would be an excellent opportunity to make a name. The year's end was approaching, and the deep winter had arrived. After several heavy snowfalls, the farmland was frozen, and the white snow covered all the hills stretching thousands of li inside the passes. Looking out, there was nothing but endless white, completely burying under the snow any trace of the epidemic that had raged before. The people had already forgotten the suffering brought by malaria, staying indoors, counting their still unfinished seed grain, hoping winter would end quickly. Merchants in Chang'an City came and went without pause, from all corners of the land, and even gradually some fair-haired, blue-eyed traders from the west. In their spare moments from trading, these merchants all happened to hear a widely spread piece of news. The hot spring villa built by Duke Qing was about to be completed. By now, the news of the hot spring vein in Sanchuan village was known to everyone in Chang'an. Many nobles, especially merchants from all over, were eagerly hoping for it to be finished quickly. They had lived this long and had only ever heard of hot springs. They had never had the chance to experience one for themselves. Many merchants even wanted to take this opportunity to discuss cooperation with Qingxiu, hoping to get a share when the villa opened. Of course, that was pure wishful thinking. One day, Qingxiu was in a quiet room of the villa, carefully mixing some pitch-black powder. At this critical moment, he dared not be distracted, not even by the sound of knocking on the door. The proportions should be fine. After filling the specially mixed gunpowder into a bamboo tube, he shook it gently for a moment, and only after the powder inside had fully set did he exhale. This time it should work. Whoever is outside, come in. The door did not open. Instead, a household guard's voice rang out from outside. Duke Qing, the final arrangements in the estate have been completed. Everything is as you expected, and the work finished 10 days ahead of schedule. At these words, Qingxiu's brows lifted. Good. Take me to see it. He picked up his staff sword and strode quickly through the newly completed hot spring villa, inspecting everywhere. His pace was so quick the guards almost couldn't keep up. They hadn't expected Qingxiu's mood to be so good. Although the blueprints for this villa had been entirely designed by Qingxiu himself, the actual result was far better than he had imagined. After all, he had built it to the standard of a top tourist landmark, with decorations so luxurious they were nearly on par with the imperial palace. In many places, the planning and decoration far exceeded this era's norms, with a visual effect even more splendid than the palace itself. The hot springs were only one part of the estate, which also included accommodations, entertainment, artificial hills for viewing, and many scenic spots. It was truly a one-stop place for eating, drinking, playing, and enjoying. Although during construction people had vaguely known about the villa's features, seeing the entire plan realized left everyone marveling at Qingxiu's brilliance. This kind of tourism site planning was far ahead of its time. It made them feel there was nothing Qingxiu could not do. Duke Qing, everything is ready. When will we open for business? The old village chief, Lu Taima, looked at Qingxiu with bright eyes. He couldn't wait to see the villa start earning money. Not to mention, many nobles in Chang'an were also eagerly waiting to soak in the hot springs, ready to spend plenty of silver. Qingxiu thought for a moment. About 7 or 8 days from now. So long? At these words, the villagers could no longer hold back their impatience. Now that the entire village had been renovated, waiting another 7 or 8 days meant losing a lot of earnings. Everyone, the opening date has its own rules. If we rush to open now, yes, we'll make a few days' earnings early, but the effect will be greatly reduced. When the opening day comes, you'll understand why I chose that day. If any of you urgently need money, you can go to the accounts room to withdraw it at any time. You don't have to wait for the villa's business revenue. Qingxiu didn't bother explaining further. It was still too early to discuss marketing strategy with these villagers. With him speaking to this extent, the villagers no longer insisted. Since Duke Qing said so, he naturally had his reasons, so they would follow his lead. After all the villagers had left, Qingxiu stopped Lu Taima. Village chief, there's something I need you to do. On the carriage heading to the hot spring villa, Qingxiu's wives were full of anticipation. They hadn't expected the villa to be completed so soon. Thinking that they would be the first guests to be entertained there made them all the more excited. Sister Pingting, I heard that hot springs are something only the royal family can enjoy. Have you ever experienced one before? Across the whole Tang, hot springs are very rare, and inside the passes this is the only discovered hot spring vein. This is also my first time. Even the well-traveled Changsun Pingting was extremely excited. Li Yuchan curiously asked, which sister knows medicine? I heard hot springs are even more nourishing to the body than medicinal baths. Is that true? Lu Yunyan smiled slyly. Sister, Are you worried our husband has worn himself out in bed lately and want to see if the hot spring can restore him a bit? What nonsense! Last night you were serving him with me, you saw for yourself our husband's vigor. Where was he lacking in strength? The sisters chatted and laughed all the way, until the carriage stopped and they saw the grand scale of the villa with their own eyes. Almost none of them could hide their shock. At such a scale, it could easily be mistaken for a palace. They had seen many noble estates in Chang'an, but compared to this villa, those could all be called dog kennels. Ladies, after your long journey, come in quickly and have a good rest. The hot spring water has been prepared in advance, you are the very first guests to visit. Qingxiu, leaning on his staff, stood at the villa gates, smiling as he waited for his wives. Husband. The 6 women surrounded Qingxiu like stars around the moon, chirping like a flock of little birds just freed from a cage. Husband, you haven't been home for several days. It wasn't easy for me to get my turn last night. This time you must spend more days with Tingting, you ignored me for 2 nights, you have to make it up to me. Hey! Why should you get 2 nights all to yourself? Seeing the harem about to erupt, Qingxiu coughed lightly. I don't recall deciding which one of you I'd choose yet, do I? At those words, the 6 women instantly fell silent, all looking at Qingxiu with eyes full of longing, as if "choose me" were written across their faces. Especially Cui Yuyan, who quietly pressed the 2 full curves on her chest against Qingxiu. You, after spending so much time with Yunyang, seem to be learning more and more of her tricks, aren't you? Qingxiu casually squeezed Cui Yuyan's proud curves. She let out a soft, coquettish moan, her cheeks turning red. Husband. That delicate voice was enough to make one's bones melt. Clearly, Cui Yuyan had been holding back her desire for some time. Of course, after his recent busyness, Qingxiu had also accumulated quite a lot. Bringing his 6 wives to the hot spring villa was precisely to enjoy the legendary hot springs. As the first guests of the villa, the 6 wives were deeply impressed by its features and luxury. In the Tang dynasty, where the concept of travel meant little more than visiting scenic mountains and rivers, the hot spring villa completely overturned their idea of leisure. Li Yuchan even asserted that once the villa opened, its profits would far surpass all of Qingxiu's industries in Chang'an. After the much-anticipated bath ended, the night sky was full of stars. While Chang'an was under curfew, the villa was brightly lit, the courtyard lights nearly outshining the stars and moon. Outside the villa, a few children still played under the village lights. Although it was no longer midsummer and the night air wasn't suited for strolling, the villagers didn't want to waste the villa's shining lights, some wandered and chatted, others wove tools. Inside, Chang Sun Pingting sat on an upper floor, humming a tune, swinging her smooth, flawless legs in the air. Beside her, Qingxiu, now out of his bath towel, sat with her, enjoying the peaceful evening. Because of the curfew in Chang'an, Qingxiu hadn't experienced such a brightly lit evening in a long time. As for the other wives, they were already engrossed in the strange games Qingxiu had invented, things like 4 Kingdoms Kill, Wolf and Tiger Kill, and Great Rich Man, which had unusual appeal for them. Husband. Look, there are Kongming lanterns, so many of them. Chang Sun Pingting suddenly hugged Qingxiu in delight, gazing at the lanterns rising slowly from the villa, shining like stars. Her eyes sparkled with girlish joy and playfulness. From now on, we'll release Kongming lanterns here every night, lighting the night like day. Chang'an has a curfew, but the hot spring villa will never have one. Qingxiu smiled faintly. Husband, you're truly thoughtful, but your eyes seem to be getting better, right? Can you faintly see some light now? Thinking that Qingxiu couldn't fully see this spectacle, Chang Sun Pingting felt a pang of loss. Of course. Though not perfectly clear, it's better than nothing. And soon, there'll be something even more beautiful to see. Qingxiu suddenly clapped his hands. After a moment's silence, a series of loud booming sounds echoed through the villa. Ah! At first, Chang Sun Pingting was startled and clung to Qingxiu. Then she saw streaks of sparkling light shoot into the night sky faster than the lanterns. With a pop, the fiery points burst, exploding into dazzling, multicolored fireworks that filled the heavens. It was as if the sky had been draped with a breathtaking painted curtain. The young woman stared in a daze at the fireworks. Even for someone of her high status, it was the most spectacular, beautiful sight she had ever seen. Husband, what is this? Only after the last firework faded did she reluctantly look away, her mind still flashing with the image. This is called fireworks. When the villa opens, they will surely become a luxury item sought after by every noble in the city. Qingxiu laughed loudly. While Qingxiu devoted much of his energy to exploring the origins of life with his wives, the vassal lords arrived in Chang'an one after another before the tribute date. As usual, the capital became lively and bustling. Every vassal lord entering the city had a grand entourage, beating drums and marching with fanfare, drawing crowds every day to gawk and feast their eyes again and again. In their spare time, the citizens debated which lord's display was grander, though most shut their doors to sigh over the extravagance. One day, Lier finally finished some troublesome matters and truly didn't want to be buried under another mountain of documents. He decided to set everything aside and take a walk outside the Forbidden City. Not wanting to draw attention, he only took a few guards and ordered that the palace release no news of his outing. Reaching the city wall of the Forbidden City, the crisp, cold air hit his face. Lier took a few deep breaths and finally felt more at ease. Come, let's go out and have a look. We'll go to Weiji residence and try some fresh dishes. Lier was in a fine mood, but when he gave the order, the guards did not move. Instead, they looked at each other awkwardly. What are you waiting for? The guards looked troubled. Your Majesty, you told us not to draw attention and not to let anyone know you were leaving the palace. But right now, several vassal lords are entering the city, and the streets are being cleared for them. What? You mean to say I have to give way to those lords? Lier was displeased. The guards quickly lowered their heads and said carefully, If you wish it so, Your Majesty, then we should announce your departure from the palace, otherwise, we'll have to make way for the vassal lords. Hearing this, Lier understood their dilemma. Forget it, I won't leave the palace. I'll just wander inside the Forbidden City. Feeling deflated, he lost all interest in walking and merely glanced casually over Chang'an from the city wall, but then he frowned. Several vassal lords were passing through the streets with an ostentatious display, so noisy it was as if they wanted the entire city to know. Wherever the procession of that vassal lord passed, silk was laid out on the ground for the carriages and horses to trample. This scene left pedestrians and townsfolk dumbfounded. That silk could be directly used as currency for trade. It was even more wasteful than throwing money into water. The servants accompanying them seemed completely used to it and showed no hint of regret while laying it down. Even after being trampled by fine carriages and horses, the silk showed no damage. As soon as the vassal lord's procession passed over it, some poorer townsfolk hurried forward to gather the dust-covered silk and took it away with great care. That silk, wasted so casually on the ground, was something they probably could never afford even half of, no matter how hard they worked their whole lives. Which vassal lord is that? How can he be so extravagant and wasteful? Lier frowned, his expression growing darker and darker. Even in the imperial palace, there had never been such terrifying waste. Even when building a heated pavilion, Lier would calculate every expense carefully, let alone using silk as a road covering for carriages to crush. Your Majesty, that is Chang'an, king of Lingnan. He has always been like this, extravagant and wasteful, a guard replied. Hearing this, Lier's expression became even gloomier. Lingnan was one of the poorest regions of the Tang Empire, covered in endless untouched jungle. Poisonous miasma lingered there year-round, and the little arable land available was far from fertile. The people who farmed there suffered from the climate year after year, and most of them had short lives. Yet Chang'an wasted manpower and resources like this, completely ignoring the life and death of the people of Lingnan. Who knew how many lives could have been saved in Lingnan with the resources he squandered? Seeing this, Lier lost all interest in his walk. Back to the palace. I must give this king of Lingnan a good reminder. How can he be so extravagant and wasteful? The king of Lingnan's procession, with its silk-covered route, reached the Forbidden City gates. The luxurious, awe-inspiring entourage arranged ceremonial implements to welcome him into the Forbidden City. The curtain of the carriage was slowly lifted, and a plump, middle-aged man stepped down. This was Feng Ang, king of Lingnan. His son, Feng Zhidai, carefully supported his father down. From the sweat on his brow, it was clear helping such a heavy father was no easy task. Ah, what a pity the silk can't be laid into the Forbidden City. Feng Ang shook his fat hand, signaling his attendants to lead the way, but was stopped by the city guards. Your Highness, vassal lords entering the capital may not bring too many attendants. More than half of your followers cannot enter, you must arrange for them yourself. Feng Ang was displeased, but since this was Lier's order, he dared not show it on his face. Let the senior attendants follow me into the city. The rest should find an inn outside. As you command. The attendants cheered. Not going into the city meant they would receive a generous stipend and could freely enjoy themselves there. Father, since you're just going to pay tribute, why don't I wait for you outside the city? Feng Zhidai said with a grin. Feng Ang glared at him. You rascal, do you think I don't know what you're up to? You've been holding it in all this way, a little longer won't hurt. Father, this is my first time in Chang'an. I've long heard you speak of how prosperous it is, can't you let me see for myself? Besides, with your veteran guards by your side, you don't need me. What if I, not knowing the rules, offend His Majesty and cause you trouble? Feng Jidai's wheedling left Feng Ang helpless, and he impatiently waved him off to do as he pleased. "Thank you, father." Feng Jidai nearly cheered. Without even waiting to see his father enter the Forbidden City, he gathered his servants to go enjoy themselves. "I've been holding back all this way. Let's have a good few days of pleasure. Young master, I've long heard that the food, drink, and entertainment of Chang'an are far beyond anything in our small places. Today we'll see for ourselves." Bah, no matter how big Chang'an is, it was still built by people. How much better could it be than Lingnan City? No class. The group noisily and carelessly shouted, greatly annoying passers-by. If not for their identity as the king of Lingnan's entourage, people would likely have argued with them already. While the vassal lords from the farthest regions were arriving in the capital, the long-prepared hot spring villa was about to announce its opening. Even before the announcement, a large crowd of nobles and wealthy merchants had gathered outside the villa gates. They stood in groups, each more impatient than the last. They had waited far too long for this day. They were already bored with the brothels and pleasure districts. None of them had ever experienced an emperor-level hot spring. Even some vassal lords newly arrived in Chang'an rushed over when they heard the news. At first, they had planned to use their noble status to cut in line, but when they arrived, they found no one here was much lower than themselves. There was nothing to do but queue honestly. Near noon, Qingxiu slowly came to the villa gates, and at his appearance, the crowd quieted considerably. "Thank you all for your support. Today the hot spring villa officially opens. If you find it satisfactory, please help spread the word." Qingxiu clapped his hands, and the next moment a series of ceremonial cannon blasts echoed from inside the villa. At first, the crowd was startled by the sudden noise, but then they saw colorful bursts blooming in the air, splendid fireworks. The dazzling explosions drew gasps and shining eyes from everyone. They had never seen such beautiful fireworks before. "I'd only heard that Duke Qin could make gunpowder as powerful as thunder. I didn't expect it could be used like this. This is truly grand. If we could set off these fireworks during every holiday or birthday, that would be." Exclamations came one after another, clearly showing how deeply impressed they were by the fireworks Qingxiu had specially created. Seeing the moment was right, Qingxiu said, "These are small things I happened to invent. Unlike the powerful gunpowder, they're better suited for celebration. If you like them, you can buy some when you leave the villa. But the quantity is limited, first come, first served." At those words, many in the crowd immediately resolved that they must buy some fireworks. If fireworks were set off during celebrations, they would absolutely draw huge attention and greatly boost prestige. Of course, for now I ask everyone to first enjoy the hot spring villa itself. Let's set aside the matter of fireworks so as not to spoil your leisure. At Qingxiu's word, the crowd immediately streamed in one after another, eager to personally experience the hot spring bath. "Village chief, I'm leaving this all to you." Qingxiu had no desire to deal with so many people. Seeing all these nobles vying to enter, he knew his task here was complete. "Rest assured, Duke Qing. Leave it to us. This is the golden rice bowl you built for us, and there's no way we'll let it break." Lu Taima was overjoyed. Leaving the noisy villa, Qingxiu ordered the carriage to take him back to Chang'an. He hadn't forgotten that today Ling Yuqing and Lu Yunyan had arranged for him to accompany them on a street outing. It had also been a long time since he had strolled the streets to relax, so he went along with them. Chang'an City, West Straight Street. Ling Yuqing and Lu Yunyan were strolling the market with interest, accompanied only by 2 or 3 household guards for protection. If not for Su Xiaochun's insistence, they wouldn't have brought any guards at all. After all, in Chang'an, who didn't know they were the wives of Duke Qing, and who would dare offend them? "Yunyan, shall we go to Cuiyu Pavilion on West Street for jewelry? I hear the proprietress just got in more ornaments from the western regions." "I'm not interested. Western jewelry is heavy and cumbersome, and most of it is gaudy pure gold. I don't care for it." "Don't say that, I still rather like their agate pieces." The two women chatted as they walked, while the 2 burly guards followed with stern faces, scanning every passerby. Something Ling Yuqing felt spoiled the mood. "Hey, you two, go to Ruyue House and pick up the pastries we ordered, then meet us after." Ling Yuqing gave the order casually. "But madam told us we must stay with you for your safety." "It's fine. In broad daylight, what could happen to us? Just remember, after picking them up, come find us at Cuiyu Pavilion." Before the guards could answer, Ling Yuqing grabbed Lu Yunyan's hand and strode toward Cuiyu Pavilion. Helpless, the guards went to fetch the pastries. At that moment, a noisy group of men emerged from Yuhong House, each smelling of alcohol and looking very pleased. "I have to say, the women here are far better than those plain, vulgar ones in Lingnan. If I could come here every day, it'd be like living in paradise. The young master's right, those waists, those hips, truly, Ah! If only we could stay in Chang'an forever. These men were none other than Feng Zhidai, son of the king of Lingnan, and his entourage. Seeing this loud, swaggering band of outsiders parading through the streets filled Lu Yunyan with disgust. These coarse-mannered half-savage men from Lingnan were impossible to find attractive, especially since they had just come out of a brothel. Feng Zhidai glanced around idly, wondering where to have fun next, when suddenly his gaze fixed on Ling Yuqing and Lu Yunyan as they passed. He had thought the women he'd just been with in the brothel were unmatched beauties. But compared to these two, the difference was heaven and earth. He could hardly believe there could be women so perfect in looks and figure, and so outstanding in bearing. For a moment, Feng Zhidai stood there stunned, unable to take his eyes off them. Truly, peerless. Even his attendants were staring at the two women in a daze. This, of course, only made Lu Yunyan and Ling Yuqing angrier. Stay away from us. Look again and I'll gouge your eyes out. If you've never seen women before, crawl back to the brothel and stop disgracing yourself in the street. Ling Yuqing snapped without politeness, but Feng Zhidai actually looked as if he enjoyed it. Ah, even your voice is so pleasant. Even being scolded by you feels good. He nearly drooled as he added, two beauties, I happen to be free, why not let me take you around Chang'an? I'll buy you anything you like. Don't be shy, tonight, just let me enjoy your company. Leave now, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Lu Yunyan's face was cold, her voice laced with barely contained fury. Her hand was already on the jade vial in her sleeve containing poisonous goo worms. If this lecher dared provoke her again. Young master, wait. Look at the jade plaques at their waists, they seem to be of the rank of a duke's wives. One sharp-eyed attendant had noticed Lu Yunyan's rank insignia and cried out. They had almost provoked someone very important. Nonsense. Feng Zhidai, his brain ruled by lust, cursed the man with wine on his breath. There's no woman I want that I can't have. So what if she's a duke's wife? Starting today, I'll have them both. Staggering forward with a lewd grin, he said, come on, beauties, let me walk with you. Lu Yunyan had reached her limit. She pushed Ling Yuqing aside and was about to hurl the jade vial in her hand when. Suddenly, a sharp gust struck, making her eyes water so she instinctively shielded her face with her sleeve and stepped back. The next instant came a piercing scream. Husband! Ling Yuqing cried out in joy. Lu Yunyan looked up to see Qingxiu standing with his back to them, just in time. His expression was like ice, his staff planted on the ground. Feng Zhidai lay on the street clutching a bloody, mangled arm, writhing in pain. Young master! His attendants rushed forward in panic. None of them had even seen when his arm had been broken. Didn't your father ever tell you to mind your words in the street? Or has lust eaten away all your brains? Qingxiu's voice was cold, his anger rising. It had taken him only an instant to close the distance and break Feng Zhidai's arm. To dare lay hands on his women, this fool had no idea how serious the consequences would be. If he let Feng Zhidai walk out of Chang'an unscathed, it would disgrace his title of duke. Be bastard! You're just a duke, how dare you hit me? Feng Zhidai was in agony, the pain from his broken arm nearly making him faint. He had been used to swaggering unchallenged in Lingnan, no one had ever dared teach him a lesson like this. Blinded by rage, he wished he could have Qingxiu torn to pieces right then. I'll kill you, and make your two women serve me for life to atone. He pointed his good hand at Qingxiu, gnashing his teeth. Lu Yunyan's face grew even darker at those words. What she could least tolerate was someone threatening and insulting Qingxiu right in front of her. She was about to act, but Qingxiu slowly stepped in front of her. With me here, there's no need for you to make a move. These few rotten fish and shrimp, how could they possibly threaten me? Qingxiu gave a slight smile, and in that moment a chilling killing intent burst from his whole body. This Feng Zhidai was truly something, he really deserved a special kind of reward. What are you standing around for? Kill him for me. Feng Zhidai jumped up and cursed angrily, but his attendants only looked at each other and not one dared to move. They weren't fools. The man in front of them was of duke's rank. If they actually attacked, it would be a capital crime. Feng Zhidai shouted in fury, do you think I'd abandon you? Even if you beat him to death today, I'll take the blame no matter what happens. Just get him. Whether or not he could really take the blame, the attendants knew very well that if they didn't act now, they'd be punished later. With Feng Eng's brutal temper, once he learned they had failed to protect his son and let him lose an arm, he would slaughter them all. Get him! A dozen attendants rolled up their sleeves, glaring as they advanced on Qingxiu. Don't hold back. Beat him hard. Feng Zhidai shouted, fanning the flames. One burly man raised his fist without mercy and swung it straight at Qingxiu's face. But instead of being knocked down as expected, the man felt a stabbing pain in the top of his foot before his punch could land. At some point, Qingxiu had driven his staff straight through the man's foot, even piercing the stone tiles below. Aha! The big man screamed in agony, trying with all his strength to pull the staff out, but since it was lodged in the stone it wouldn't budge at all. Let's stretch our fists and legs a bit. Qingxiu ignored the staff, stepping forward and slamming a heavy punch into the face of another man rushing at him. Thud! The burly man dropped instantly, spitting out several broken teeth. Using the momentum from that punch, Qingxiu spun and kicked backward, sending another man, who was swinging a long club at his head, flying. The man screamed and crashed into several others, knocking them all down. The attackers' formation fell apart. They had never imagined Qingxiu could take down so many in just one move each. Once the encirclement broke, Qingxiu moved like a coiled dragon, freely unleashing a ruthless beating. They couldn't even see him clearly before being struck. When he hit them, whether with fists or feet, it was like a mountain falling on them. A single blow left them unable to get back up. Good hit. That one on the left, he's still moving, husband, go give him a kick. And the one on the right, he just tried to sneak up on you, yes, just like that. Ling Yuqing and Lu Yunyan watched with delight, cheering him on, worried only that he might not hit hard enough. In just moments, all the burly men lay sprawled on the ground, unable even to groan. Qingxiu turned his head slightly to the man whose foot was still pinned by the staff. He was too weak to shout anymore, clutching the staff in pain and trying in vain to pull it out. If you wanted it out, you could have just said so. I'll help you. Qingxiu sneered, stepped forward, and yanked the staff free in one swift motion. The man screamed again, then was knocked unconscious by a heavy punch. Refreshing. As expected of my husband. Lu Yunyan beamed happily, her pent-up anger finally eased. The fierce street fight had already drawn a huge crowd of onlookers. Isn't that Duke Qing? Did he just beat someone up? I doubt Duke Qing started it. Who could provoke him enough to make him fight in the street? So you're saying they had it coming? The crowd packed the street, but no one dared step forward. Feng Zhidai stared at his men, bullies who in Lingnan could run wild unchecked, now lying on the ground groaning in agony, many with broken arms or legs. If not for two trembling attendants holding him up, he might not even be able to stand himself. You, what are you doing? Don't you know I'm the son of the king of Lingnan? Even the emperor has to give my father some respect, and you. Before he could finish, Qingxiu stepped forward and drove a savage kick into his chest, sending him flying. The crowd instinctively parted, and Feng Zhidai crashed into a stone lion outside a shop with a sharp crack of breaking bones. The two attendants fled in panic. Qingxiu strode through the crowd to stand over him like a man examining livestock. Feng Zhidai didn't know how many bones were broken. The pain was so intense he could barely lift his head. I've heard about your king of Lingnan, a wasteful, depraved tyrant who abuses his people. If the emperor gives him face, that's the emperor's business. Don't confuse it with mine. Qingxiu stomped hard on his chest again, snapping several ribs. Feng Zhidai coughed up blood, unable to even speak to beg for mercy. He could only stare up at Qingxiu in terror, eyes full of pleading, but Qingxiu ignored him. He had intended to kill Feng Zhidai on the spot, but then thought of a punishment worse than death for a lecher like him. Gripping his staff, Qingxiu suddenly drove it down hard into Feng Zhidai's groin. His eyes bulged wide in agony, his whole body arching as the staff pinned him to the ground. That most precious part of him was now gone forever. Ugh! The men in the crowd instinctively clenched their legs, imagining the pain. That kid's never going to be a man again. Looks like he really angered Duke Qing. I heard someone say earlier he was harassing Duke Qing's wives. I thought it was a rumor, but seeing this. Most of the onlookers spoke with gloating satisfaction, thinking Feng Zhidai still hadn't suffered enough. When the king of Lingnan had entered the city, his extravagance was still fresh in everyone's minds. Naturally, they were happy to see such decadent nobles getting humiliated. Especially since they had provoked Qingxiu. Feng Zhidai was in such pain he couldn't even scream. His body trembled violently, then his head lolled as he fainted, blood spurting straight from his crotch. Qingxiu flicked the blood from his staff and frowned slightly, feeling the man's blood had dirted it. Make way, make way! The soldiers, arriving late after hearing the news, pushed through the crowd to find the scene littered with bodies. Duke Qing's martial skills are as terrifying as ever, so many men, and he laid them all out in just moments. Shut up! What are you standing here for? Get to work! The soldiers began checking the situation, while the captain approached cautiously. When he saw the unconscious Feng Zhidai on the ground, he almost blacked out. Wasn't this the son of the king of Lingnan? If he had brawled in the street with Qingxiu, this matter was far beyond what the captain could interfere in. Duke Qing, what happened here? And why is he? The captain pointed to Feng Zhidai, still unconscious, and asked carefully. This man let his lust control his brain, so I gave him a cure, Qingxiu said flatly. The captain was confused, but when he looked and saw the blood-soaking Feng Jidai's crotch, a chill ran through his own. Upon closer inspection, it was worse. Feng Jidai's manhood had been destroyed, his limbs had multiple shattered bones, and not a single rib remained intact. He was hanging on to life by a thread. Even if he survived, the rest of his life would be spent bedridden. Better to be dead. Duke Qing, you do realize he is the son of the king of Lingnan. This cannot be, absolutely cannot be. The captain's head throbbed, his words stumbling over themselves. If the emperor blamed him, 10 heads wouldn't be enough to save him. What's there to fear? You didn't do it. If the emperor asks, just say it was me, and let him come find me. Especially that king of Lingnan, after I've educated his son, he should thank me. The captain was about to suggest Qingxiu come with him to the palace to explain, but Qingxiu simply waved his hand and strolled off with his 2 wives. Clearly, he didn't consider this any more serious than killing a stray dog in the street. Get him carried back, carefully, don't let him die. The captain could only give the order through gritted teeth, silently praying the man's life was tough enough to last until he could hand him over, anything but dying in his custody. On the way back to the duke's manor, Qingxiu was chatting and laughing with his wives, not thinking about the incident at all. Husband, are all people from that barbaric Lingnan land so rude and unreasonable? That man's father, the king of Lingnan, is a complete bastard too. Lu Yunyan still spoke with clear disdain. He got what he deserved. Judging from him, he's probably done plenty of bullying back in Lingnan. But still, husband, with the way you beat him, won't it be troublesome to deal with later? Li Yuqing asked, slightly worried. No problem. Even if I had killed the king of Lingnan in the street just now, I could still resolve it. Qingxiu gestured for them not to worry. What bothers me more is that scum ruined your mood for strolling today. The 2 women smiled warmly at his words. Even now, Qingxiu cared about their feelings, that truly meant he kept them in his heart. Don't worry, I'll make it up to you both later. Husband, no need to be so polite with us. They walked back to the manor laughing together. Of course, while Qingxiu was at ease, the palace was in an uproar. The king of Lingnan had barely settled into his quarters when he was summoned outside. At first Feng Ang was annoyed, but when he saw his son Feng Jidai, barely breathing, manhood destroyed, he almost fainted on the spot. It took a long round of fussing from everyone before he recovered enough to speak. His first reaction was to curse with bloodshot eyes. Which blind fool dared to do this to my poor son? I'll have his life. I'll make his whole family pay. My poor son. He hugged the bloody Feng Jidai and wept, nearly suffocating him with his bulk until the imperial physician persuaded him to let his son be taken for treatment. Who did this? Feng Ang glared at the 2 attendants who had fled back, his voice harsh. They didn't dare hide anything and recounted everything that had happened. The more Feng Ang heard, the angrier he got. Qingxiu, that bastard. They were just 2 of his concubines. Even if my son touched them, which he didn't, a bit of compensation would have been enough. To beat my son like this, his whole family couldn't pay enough. He cursed until the attendants' faces were sprayed with spit. Go request an audience for me. I'll tell His Majesty about this. Qingxiu must pay in blood. Feng Ang was still rational enough to know he couldn't take revenge privately against a man of Qingxiu's rank. Otherwise, he'd already have sent every fighter he had to storm his house. Meanwhile, Li Er was overwhelmed with matters when Feng Ang's complaint reached him. It's just a little jealousy spat, does it need me to get involved? At first he was irritated, but when he learned Qingxiu was involved and heard how badly Feng Jidai had been beaten, his head began to ache. As expected, anything involving Qingxiu was never a small matter. Still, he thought Feng Jidai deserved it, if he hadn't provoked the iron wall that was Qingxiu, who knew how much chaos he'd cause in Chang'an. Summon Duke Qing to the palace tomorrow. Sure enough, by evening the summons arrived. Li Er wasn't in a rush, he merely sent word for Qingxiu to prepare to come the next day. From that, Qingxiu guessed even Li Er couldn't stand the Lingnan father and son. Also, young Master Ho came again and asked Xiaoren to pass you a message. Is he sick? Qingxiu blurted. Ignoring him only seemed to make Ho Jingheng act even more like a monkey, doing anything to get his attention. Even Urguzi found it laughable, this kid clearly had never been taught a harsh lesson by society. Tell Ho Yuanheng I'm happy to talk with him. Have him come to the hot spring villa himself tomorrow evening, and don't tell anyone else. A cold glint flashed across Qingxiu's face. Seeing this, Urguzi had a vague guess of what was coming. Do you need me to bring some men with you? You think I need help to deal with him? Yes. Knowing his place, Urguzi quickly withdrew. Not long after he left, the door was knocked again. It was Li Yuqing and Lu Yunyan, both coming in with flushed faces. What's this about? Qingxiu was puzzled. He remembered that tonight was supposed to be Chang Sunpingting's turn. "Husband, we were frightened so much today. No matter what, you should comfort us properly," Li Yuqing said with a blush and a hint of playful reproach, sitting beside him. "Tonight, nothing else matters, just the three of us." As she spoke, her voice grew a little urgent, filled with temptation. No need to ask, clearly, they had come to an agreement with Changsun Pingting. All right. Qingxiu didn't mind who it was. He told Lu Yunyan to put out the lights and devoted himself to soothing the two women after the day's fright. Of course, that comforting kept them busy most of the night, until the two women were exhausted before they finally went to sleep. Morning court. Li Er's expression was dark, and he said nothing. All the ministers on the court floor also stayed silent. Everyone knew today would bring sharp confrontations, and no one wanted to get caught in it. Except the one at the center of it all, the king of Lingnan. "Your Majesty. Court has been in session this long, yet Qingxiu still hasn't come. He clearly does not put you in his eyes. Perhaps he knows disaster is coming today, and is gathering his belongings to run. Why not send men to the Duke of Qing's manor to seize him now, lest he escape?" "What did you say?" Li Er suddenly looked at Feng Ang, his expression gloomy. Cold sweat instantly ran down Feng Ang's back as he realized he had spoken carelessly. This was Chang'an, not the barbarian land of Lingnan where he ruled like a petty emperor. In Lingnan, he could do whatever he pleased, and Li Er might not interfere, but here, to act like the master of the city in front of the emperor was another matter entirely. "Your Majesty, I misspoke." Feng Ang wiped his brow nervously. Even the ministers watching felt disgusted. This fat fool had clearly grown far too comfortable lording over Lingnan. Li Er said flatly, "Today we speak only of Duke Qing injuring your son. Nothing else. Keep your hands in check and don't overreach." Feng Ang could never have imagined that Qingxiu being late to morning court was practically routine. Sometimes he wouldn't come at all without notice. "But Your Majesty, what if Qingxiu really ran?" "Run? Why would I run?" A lazy, casual voice came from outside the palace gates. Everyone turned to see Qingxiu walking in. "You actually dare to come?" The moment Feng Ang saw him, his eyes turned red and he ground his teeth in rage. Thinking of his son's miserable state, he wanted nothing more than to tear Qingxiu to pieces. "Nonsense! I haven't done anything shameful. In fact, yesterday I rid the people of a scourge. I didn't even get a reward, and now I'm not allowed in court?" Qingxiu strolled in as if nothing was wrong, ignoring him completely. Rid the people of a scourge? Even Li Er was puzzled. Qingxiu's half-smile turned toward Feng Ang. "Feng Zhidai has made a habit of bullying men and women. He dared to come to Chang'an and act wildly toward a duke's household. I crippled him. Who knows how many people I saved from future humiliation? How is that not ridding the people of a scourge?" Hearing this, several ministers almost burst out laughing and had to cover their mouths. Even Li Er struggled to keep a straight face. But Feng Ang's composure shattered. "Nonsense! My son is of noble birth, he will one day inherit my title. So what if he disciplines a few commoners? Even if he teased your concubines, so what? They were dressed up in bright makeup in broad daylight, seducing my son. Compensation would have been enough, but you dare strike him. What did you just say?" Qingxiu's voice went cold, a wave of killing intent slamming into Feng Ang. It felt like being prey locked on by a deadly predator. His whole body trembled, hands and feet icy. In that moment, he truly feared Qingxiu. Even battle-hardened generals might not withstand Qingxiu's killing aura, let alone a pampered man like Feng Ang. He couldn't get a word out. His attendants, seeing him shake, hurried to support him, only to find his sleeves soaked through with sweat. "Dare to touch my women, letting him live was already great mercy." Qingxiu could never tolerate anyone laying hands on his women, especially so lightly and without shame. Looking at Feng Ang now, he felt the man almost seemed to be asking for death. "Your Majesty, please pass judgment. Ordinary people suffer such bullying and are punished severely, how much more when it is the son of a king?" Feng Ang, regaining his senses, quickly appealed to Li Er. But Li Er only looked at him with disdain. He himself thought Feng Zhidai had gotten what he deserved. This trivial matter, and he wanted him to punish Qingxiu? Even Li Er, hearing Feng Ang's words, wanted to beat him. "Duke Qing, you were too harsh. Feng Zhidai is barely alive, could you not have shown some restraint? Now that it's come to this, I can't protect you. This matter must be handled properly today, don't blame me for ignoring our past ties." Li Er put on a show of anger, but Qingxiu looked indifferent. "Your Majesty, whatever punishment you wish, I accept. I'll just give up that rid the people of a scourge reward then." This caught Li Er and the court off guard. "I am guilty for beating Feng Zhidai, but Feng Zhidai, for harassing my wives and concubines and years of bullying men and women, is also guilty. Let's call it even, he's getting off cheap." Feng Ang, no matter how afraid, couldn't hold back. He stomped his foot and shouted, "That's not the same thing. Those were in the past." Qingxiu shot back, "How is it not the same? If past crimes can be ignored, then it was yesterday's me who beat Feng Zhidai. Why should you judge today's me?" "You." Feng Ang hadn't expected Qingxiu to be so sharp-tongued. He stomped furiously, nearly choking on his own breath. Even the ministers were deeply impressed by this round of conceptual exchanges and rhetoric. No wonder it's Qingxiu, he's never lost in a war of words. Wei Zheng lowered his head, thinking, if only he had a tongue like Qingxiu's, perhaps most of the time he could persuade Li Er more easily. "Your Highness. Your Highness. Anger hurts the body, and you still have a heart condition, you absolutely must not lose your temper." The guards, seeing that this man was so angry he might swallow his breath in one gulp, hurried forward to comfort and calm him. "King of Lingnan, you'd better restrain yourself. If you accidentally get so mad you die, won't I have another crime added to my record?" Qingxiu said indifferently. "Your Majesty, this man has been making outrageous statements in court, clearly not respecting you at all. He should be judged. Please pronounce the punishment." Feng Ang no longer wanted to spar with Qingxiu and turned directly to Li Er. "Since you say so, I must act according to the law." Li Er suppressed his smile and looked at Qingxiu with a serious face. Although the Duke of Qing struck and injured Feng Zhidai, there was a reason, but he hit too hard. "How about this? Feng Zhidai's medical expenses in Chang'an City will be paid by the Duke of Qing, as a form of apology." After speaking, Li Er glanced at Feng Ang, who was still looking eagerly at him, waiting for more punishment to be announced. "Do you have anything else to say?" "Your Majesty, is that it?" Feng Ang looked utterly shocked, but Li Er nodded firmly. After all, this matter was also Feng Zhidai's fault first. He is of noble status, but the Duke of Qing is also of noble status. In this world, how can anyone harass and insult the wife or concubines of a duke without punishment? In the end, you are both pillars of the state. If the situation were reversed and the Duke of Qing was injured by Feng Zhidai, I would also find it difficult to pass judgment. Li Er pretended to look troubled, but in truth, he loathed Feng Ang. In Chang'an, he loved the people as his own children, lived frugally, but this scoundrel in Lingnan oppressed the people and committed all sorts of crimes. If not for Feng Ang's deep roots in Lingnan, Li Er would have punished him severely upon his arrival in the capital. Qingxiu's incident was just the perfect chance to cut down Feng Ang's arrogance. Feng Ang never expected the judgment to be this result. It was clearly Li Er favoring Qingxiu. "Your Majesty, I don't want any compensation from Qingxiu, only one thing, let him suffer the same pain as my son. My son had his manhood ruined by him, what crime did he deserve for that?" The more Feng Ang spoke, the more agitated he became, and he even began wailing loudly in court. His piercing cries made everyone cover their ears. For someone his age, his voice is still that loud. Du Ruhui, who had just recovered from a serious illness, frowned. Such noise was too much for a convalescent. Fang Xianling whispered beside him, "Even if court ends today, this will have endless aftereffects." No need to say more, everyone knew the king of Lingnan was not one to swallow a loss. "Minister, are you trying to make things difficult for me?" Li Er's face darkened, he no longer wished to mediate. This matter had to end today, if the king of Lingnan kept pushing. "Your Majesty, I can accept." Qingxiu agreed casually. "As far as I know, the king of Lingnan will leave in 3 days at most. Based on the most expensive medical clinic in Chang'an, 3 days of treatment, 20 taels of silver is enough." In Qingxiu's view, the king of Lingnan's son, the future heir, was worth no more than 20 taels of silver. This was an unbearable humiliation for Feng Ang. "Your Majesty, do you really want to decide like this? I've guarded Lingnan for many years. Without me, it would have fallen into chaos long ago. Doing this to me today is really, sigh." Feng Ang cried and blew his nose while trying to paint himself as a hero, making everyone feel disgusted. If not for the early Tang still being unstable, Li Er would never have tolerated him as a local tyrant in Lingnan. "My judgment today is the most impartial. If you have doubts, you can submit a memorial later to discuss it in detail." Of course, even if he did submit one, Li Er wouldn't bother to read it. "King of Lingnan, later you can send someone to my residence for the money. I'll give you 25 taels, and the extra is for nutritional costs. No need to thank me," Qingxiu said casually. Changsun Wuji chimed in, "The Duke of Qing has no objection to His Majesty's punishment, which already shows consideration for your dignity. Please accept it." Feng Ang suddenly calmed down, he realized Li Er was determined to help Qingxiu. The truth was, Qingxiu would never receive any real punishment. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for upholding justice. As for that money, the Duke of Qing should keep it. After all, you can't see, use it to buy medicine if you trip and get hurt." Feng gave Qingxiu a venomous look. He had never hated anyone so much. It wasn't just his son, his own dignity, the dignity of a king, had been utterly crushed in court. King of Lingnan, you're too polite. Although I can't see, my heart and mind are clear, unlike some people, whose eyes are sharp but only bring trouble to themselves. Qingxiu's sarcasm was obvious. Court dismissed. The timely announcement marked the official end of the matter, at least on the surface. But anyone with sense could tell, it wasn't over. After court dispersed, Li Er deliberately kept Qingxiu to go with him to the palace. Duke of Qing, that Feng is vindictive, he won't accept today's result quietly. Be careful. Li Er warned earnestly, he's not like foreign envoys I can easily handle, he is the king of Lingnan. Thank you for the warning, your majesty. But here in Chang'an, with his useless underlings, he can't do anything to me. Rather, your majesty should be careful, when he returns to Lingnan, he might make a move. Make a move? Ha, Duke of Qing, you're overthinking. He wouldn't dare. Li Er dismissed the idea completely. Historically, Lingnan's native kings always knew they couldn't match the Central Plains. Whenever the court was in chaos, they would quickly sever ties with the old dynasty and declare themselves rulers. But once the empire stabilized, they immediately submitted, never courting disaster. Li Er didn't believe a pampered man like Feng would dare rebel. Qingxiu smiled. Your majesty, that's a bit biased, or rather, you're giving him too much credit. Too much credit? Li Er was puzzled. That man is a complete fool. He inherited the throne and may not have the same clear understanding of the power gap between the Central Plains and Lingnan as the last king of Lingnan. Qingxiu's words hit the mark. For a moment, Li Er was actually stunned by Qingxiu's words. But he quickly shook his head in denial. Duke of Qing, although that Feng is a useless drunkard, he still has at least that much self-awareness. Still, I will carefully consider your opinion. At the very least, I'll keep him under close watch, and if there's any abnormal behavior, I'll never let it go. Qingxiu shook his head slightly. Your majesty, you always overestimate others, but never mind. You'll soon know whether I'm right or wrong. In any case, you must stay alert. If necessary, I can send some men to help you. Qingxiu rolled his eyes at Li Er. They both knew this was just polite talk. With his own skills, would he need Li Er to send protection? Not to mention, Feng had no way of threatening him at all. Your majesty should keep your men for yourself, I don't need them for now. Hee. Duke of Qing, what are you saying? Oh, by the way, I heard recently that you've built a hot spring villa, and it seems to have quite a good reputation. If I have time, I'd really like to take a look. No problem. I can reserve the most luxurious room for your majesty, but don't forget to pay the deposit in advance. Otherwise, if you come and there are no rooms available, that would be bad. Li Er's face darkened. Qingxiu wouldn't even treat him to one free soak in the hot springs. After court, Feng returned to the residence arranged by the Ministry of Rites with a dark face. On the way, his attendants didn't dare say a word, afraid they might become the targets of his anger. When Feng sat down and saw the return gift from the emperor still on the table, he roared and smashed it to the ground. The valuable custom-made imperial porcelain shattered into pieces, making his subordinates tremble in fear. Your Highness, calm down. This is Chang'an City. If the Ministry of Rites hears that you smashed the emperor's gift, my heavens. Yes, if you have something to say, wait until we get back. Be careful, walls have ears here. The emperor is obviously in league with Qingxiu. If you give them any excuse now, we might not make it out of Chang'an alive. Feng understood their reasoning, but he simply couldn't swallow this anger. Too much. This is too much. The emperor is clearly favoring Qingxiu, and that bastard even dared to compensate me with 25 taels of silver to humiliate me. How has that man lived until today? If I get the chance, I'll kill him with my own hands. Feng was furious, stomping on the already broken porcelain until it was crushed to powder, yet even that didn't ease his rage. Just then, a servant rushed in to report that Feng Zhidai had woken up. Still fuming, Feng got up. How is he? Take me to see him immediately. Although he was mentally prepared, seeing Feng Zhidai wrapped up like a rice dumpling on the bed still made his chest tighten. Father, is that Qingxiu dead? I want to make his skull into a chamber pot. Feng Zhidai's face was pale as death, his eyes full of venom. And his wives and concubines, all of them must, cough. Thinking of how he had become a eunuch and would spend the rest of his life bedridden as a cripple, he wished he could swallow Qingxiu alive. My son, Qingxiu has deep roots in Chang'an. I didn't expect even the emperor to favor him. But don't worry, I will never let you suffer for nothing. One day, Qingxiu will be in a state far worse than yours. Feng swore firmly. But in Feng Zhidai's eyes there was only desolation. He knew that in his current state, he could never inherit the title of King of Lingnan. Feng had more than 10 sons. If he was crippled, there would always be other candidates. No matter how much Feng loved him, he would never pass the throne to someone like him. It would ruin the Lingnan foundation built over decades. Feng thought for a moment, then called a subordinate and whispered a few instructions. The man's face changed immediately. Your Highness, I'm not confident. Qingxiu's martial skills are strong, our dozens of brothers can't even get close to him. Nonsense! Do you have to confront him directly? Can't you think of some underhanded method? Feng glared at him. Whether it's poison or fire, as long as you do it, I'll make you lord of a city when we return. But remember, you can only act after we're back in Lingnan. If it involves me, you'll regret it. The reward was tempting, but Gaoji didn't seem excited. This task was visibly difficult, he might not even survive it. Yes, Your Highness, Gaoji sighed helplessly. Soon, it was time to leave. After packing, Feng's group left the imperial city to return to Lingnan. On the way out, they deliberately passed by the Duke of Qing's residence in a showy manner. When they reached it, they stopped. The attendants gripped the hilts of their swords, looking as if they might storm in at any moment. But the 2 gate guards ignored them like clowns, standing at their posts without even drawing their blades, utter contempt. Has your Duke of Qing returned? Today he humiliated me greatly. Feng lifted the carriage curtain and mocked. Tell him to come out and see me. The guard sneered. If you want to enter the Duke's residence, you need to apply 3 days in advance. If you have an invitation, you can go in directly. But judging by your looks, your relationship with the Duke of Qing isn't good, so I doubt he'd send you an invitation. Like master, like servants, everyone in the Duke of Qing's household is the same. Feng was furious, but in Chang'an he couldn't act recklessly. At that moment, the gates opened and a servant came out smiling. My lord heard that the King of Lingnan was passing by. Are you here to collect the medical expenses? But my lord is not keen to receive you. If you want the silver, let your men come in and get it. Hearing silver again immediately brought back Feng's humiliation in court that day. Tell your master, within 3 months, I'll make him regret what he did today for the rest of his life. Throwing down these words, Feng ordered his carriage forward. Watching the King of Lingnan leave, one guard spat in disdain. Are all the people from that barbaric Lingnan so rude? Even their king has no manners. No wonder his son was crippled by the Duke of Qing. At dusk, Hou Yuanhing was preparing to leave the residence alone. Of course, just as Qingxiu had requested, he brought no attendants, only himself. Before departure, his old personal servant was still uneasy. Why don't I go with you, young master? It's better than you going alone. No need. I promised Qingxiu, and if I break my word, that brat will find fault with me. Then who knows how long it'll be before we can discuss cooperation again. Hou Yuanhing refused without even thinking. Of course, with his greedy, foolish, and ruthless nature, he wasn't just thinking about cooperation. He was already imagining a future where he squeezed Qingxiu out and took sole control of the hot spring villa. If I pull this off, father might look at me differently, maybe even make me heir. Right now, his head was full of good dreams. All right, you can go. I'll head out shortly. And remember, don't tell anyone about this. The servant had just gone out when another knock sounded at the door, making Hou Yuanhing impatient. Didn't I just tell you to leave? Why are you back again? He cursed impatiently, but before he could finish, the door was pushed open without his permission. Did I say you could come in? Get you. Hou Yuanhing's words stopped halfway, his eyes widening suddenly. It wasn't his old servant at the door, but a young man with handsome features, holding a cane sword, eyes covered with a black silk band. Good evening, young Master Hou. Qingxiu smiled faintly, closed the door behind him, and slid the bolt. Qingxiu, how did you get in? Hou Yuanhing couldn't believe it. The Duke of Lu's residence was guarded inside and out by hundreds of family guards. How could even a fly get in, let alone Qingxiu? How did you get past them? Young Master Hou, those hundreds of useless wine sacks your family keeps are nothing to me. Even if there were 10 or 100 times more, I could still come and go as I please. Though Qingxiu's face carried a smile, all the warmth in his demeanor was gone, replaced by a killing intent that made people tremble. Down. This is the Duke of Lu's residence. If you lay a hand on me here, you'll never get out alive. Hou Yuanhing's legs shook involuntarily as he tried to sound threatening. But retreating in panic, he tripped and fell to the ground. Nonsense. Even if killing you did alert them. Qingxiu pointed his cane sword at Hou Yuanhing, the gesture nearly scaring him into wetting himself. Even if they all came rushing in, I wouldn't leave a single one alive. Don't forget, I'm the Duke of Lu's son. And between the Duke of Lu and the King of Lingnan, whose status is higher? Seeing Qingxiu's complete indifference, Hou Yuanhing was overwhelmed by fear. He thought desperately of what had happened in court earlier. Qingxiu had crippled Feng Zhidai, and yet only had to pay a pitiful sum of silver. I have no grudge with you. Why did you? If you hadn't been jumping around like a clown, I wouldn't have bothered with you. Qingxiu stepped toward him, his smile cold. Today I'll give you a small lesson, learn to tuck your tail between your legs in the future. The next morning, the old servant knocked on Hou Yuanhing's door to invite him to morning tea. But after knocking for a long time, there was no response. He noticed the door was locked from the inside. Come quickly. Something's wrong with the young master, break the door. Panicking, he called the family guards, who smashed the door open. Inside, there was nothing unusual. Hou Yuanhing was lying neatly in bed, eyes closed, as if sleeping. Normally by now the young master is up, why is he still in bed? The old servant stepped closer and saw Hou Yuanhing's face pale, with blood at the corner of his mouth. He lifted the quilt, and found the bed soaked in blood. Both legs were nothing but mangled flesh, with shattered bone piercing the skin. It's over. The old servant collapsed to the ground in terror, his mind blank. He had always cared for Hou Yuanhing's daily life. If such a disaster had happened, how could he survive it? The second young master is still breathing. He's not dead. Get a doctor now. The guards reacted quickly, sending for a physician. Within 2 days, word of Hou Yuanhing's sudden crippling spread through all of Chang'an. No one knew why his legs had been destroyed at home. Even when Hou Junji questioned him repeatedly, he could only force out, I fell by accident. No one believed it, but they couldn't get anything more out of him. Pressed too hard, and he simply fell silent. The once notorious playboy of Chang'an had now become a cripple, silent and dejected, confined to a chair. That evening, just before the court's rest day, many nobles rushed to the hot spring villa to relax. Within half an hour of opening, there were almost no rooms left, leaving latecomers sighing in frustration. Qingxiu wasn't used to the noise. He ordered his guards to bring gunpowder and accompany him to an open area in the village to continue mixing fireworks. With the first day of the new year approaching, he wanted to perfect the display. While he was deep in thought over the mixtures, a few guards moving supplies chatted idly nearby. That's real skill. He took down that many men alone. Exactly. Who would have thought that such a young fellow, not even trained in martial arts, just relying on strength? If he joined the army, he'd achieve great things. Just then Qingxiu called, bring me the saltpeter. All right. They placed a large basket of saltpeter in front of him. Qingxiu asked casually, what were you talking about? Something about a man taking on 7 or 8 at once. Oh, it's nothing big, you probably haven't heard. A few days ago, a young man from another place came to the northern village, maybe 18 or 19 years old, alone and trying to make a living doing odd jobs. But as you know, someone alone is easily bullied. A few days ago, he clashed with the village bully. And guess what? The bully rounded up 9 men to attack him. Qingxiu's interest was piqued. And then? He beat all 9 by himself? Heh, you heard right, it sounds unbelievable, but that's the truth. The guard's eyes lit up as he described the scene in detail, like a storyteller. Of course, such tales from the people were always exaggerated, and Qingxiu didn't take them seriously at all. They said that a single young man had knocked down 7 or 8 strong men and came out unscathed, but in reality it was probably only 2 or 3. Where is that young man now? If he injured people, surely there would be a lawsuit. That I don't know. Anyway, after the fight, all the savings he had managed to scrape together were taken for compensation. Then he was driven out of the village and not allowed to make a living there. Who knows where he is now? I think it's 8 or 9 out of 10 he joined the army. A strong fellow like that, it's a pity if he doesn't serve the country. While everyone was chatting and laughing, without realizing it, another heavy snowfall began to fall from the sky. The big snowflakes drifted down slowly, and everyone suddenly felt the chill and instinctively pulled their clothes tighter. Duke of Qing, we should head back. If the gunpowder gets damp, it'll be useless. The guards shouldered the sulfur and saltpeter, and seeing Qingxiu still not getting up, they urged him. Just a moment. Qingxiu smiled faintly, struck his fire striker, and lit the fuse of the firecrackers he had just prepared. You've never seen fireworks in a snowstorm, have you? Before the guards could react to his words, the rows of firecrackers were already ignited. Bang bang. With a series of explosions, sparks shot into the swirling snow and then burst apart, becoming a shower of scattered fireworks. The 7-colored smoke of the fireworks intertwined and merged with the white snow in the sky, creating a completely different scene. The guards suddenly noticed, the fireworks this time were 7-colored. Compared to the 3-colored fireworks from the villa's opening, these were even more dazzling. Duke of Qing, how did you mix this? This is amazing. 3 colors was already surprising, but 7. If the people of Chang'an saw this, they'd be rushing to buy them again. Qingxiu was completely unconcerned. Of course, he would sell these fireworks, and at a high price. But their first appearance in public had to be on New Year's Eve at the Duke of Qing's residence. The next morning, while the nobles at the villa were still asleep after a night of revelry, a slightly thin young man arrived at the gates, looking curiously at the grand and luxurious building. This place is really impressive. Though his clothes were ragged, his face was fairly clean and neat, just marked with a few scars. He carried a pitifully small cloth bundle on his back and seemed to be sizing up the villa's gate, as if making plans. Just then, the villa's gate opened, and a yawning waiter pushed it wide. "Hey, with such a big villa, you must make a lot of money, right?" The waiter looked at the young man, puzzled by the sudden question. "What are you getting at?" "Well, if you make a lot of money, people will be jealous. Sooner or later, someone will come to extort you. You need people to keep you safe, right?" The young man came closer with a grin. "Why not take me in as a guard? I may look thin, but I can really fight. Pay me whatever you want, just feed me." The waiter snorted. He had been a farmer in Sanchuan village, big and sturdy. This young man, aside from a decent height, was so thin he looked like he couldn't even lift a hoe. "Be a guard? Are you joking? This is the Duke of Qing's property. Who would dare cause trouble here? Besides, you look like you can't even plow a field, and you want to be a fighter. Don't look down on me. I can take on 8 or 9 men by myself, all bigger than you. If you don't believe me, let's fight right now." The young man immediately dropped his bundle and moved to start a fight. "Go cool off somewhere else, I don't have time for you. I think you just don't dare fight me. I don't waste my time on little brats." Their arguing quickly drew the attention of Qingxiu's guards, who thought there was trouble and came running. When they saw it was just a teenage boy, they couldn't help but laugh. "Kid, this isn't the place for you to act wild. Get out of here, we won't hold it against you this time." One guard scolded him, but the young man's eyes lit up when he saw the man's sturdy build, uniform, and sword at his waist. "You're a guard here, right? How about we fight? If I lose, I'll leave immediately and take a beating for free. If I win, you give me your uniform and sword, and let me replace you as a guard here. Deal?" The guard didn't bother to answer and turned to leave. But the young man, thinking he was backing down, stepped forward, grabbed the guard's arm with one hand, and yanked hard. Caught completely off guard, the guard was pulled off balance and fell flat on his back. "Ha ha ha. You're too weak." Laughing boldly under the shocked stares of the guards, the young man said, "You lost, now hand over your clothes." Bullshit. Even though he had been thrown down easily, the guard thought it was only because he hadn't been ready. Furious, he lunged at the young man. "Wait, I haven't eaten since yesterday noon. How about, since I just knocked you down, you give me something to eat before we fight again? If you can knock me down, I'll give you a month's pay and let you eat until you burst." Less than half a stick of incense later, the guard was on the ground clutching his arm, sucking in cold air, glaring at the young man who was toying with his sword. "I don't want your month's pay, this sword's mine now. Looks pretty nice." The young man raised an eyebrow. He saw the waiter had already called over 4 or 5 villa guards with clubs, surrounding him. "You brat, are you blind? You dare make trouble here? Don't hold back, he's here to cause trouble." With a shout, they swung their clubs at him. But the young man didn't even draw his sword. He dodged one blow, grabbed the club, and shoved it back, knocking one guard to the ground. Then he seized the club and swung it, brawling with the rest. This kid, how can someone so young fight so well? The defeated guard, watching from the side, was astonished to see the young man holding his own against 4 men at once. He had no martial training, no technique, just raw, astonishing strength and quick reactions. Thud. When the last villa guard was knocked down, the young man tossed away his long staff and grimaced, rubbing his arm. During the chaotic fight, his back had taken several blows. If he weren't tough enough, he would have been the one lying on the ground now. Good skills, good strength. Several voices of praise came, and the young man turned toward them. He saw a handsome man with an extraordinary bearing, dressed elegantly, watching him with a faint smile. Are you also a guard here?" The young man looked at him suspiciously. For some reason, though he was used to throwing punches whenever words didn't work, when he faced the seemingly harmless, gentle-as-jade man, he strangely had no urge to attack. Some instinct told him, if he fought this man, he would lose badly. He had never met anyone who gave him such a feeling of pressure. Duke of Qing. At some point, Qingxiu had arrived. The guards lying on the ground quickly scrambled to their feet, faces full of shame. A group of them couldn't even beat a single boy, and they were all bruised and swollen. It was truly humiliating. Duke of Qing, this young man is unusual. One guard came forward, feels like he could be molded into something. Qingxiu nodded slightly. He had been watching from the side for a while. It's only natural you couldn't beat him. This boy clearly has natural strength. Without any training, he could still knock you over. Go get some silver from the account room for medical expenses. He gestured for the villa guards to step aside, then slowly walked toward the young man. What are you doing? The boy, who hadn't flinched even when facing dozens of attackers, now inexplicably backed away step by step, nervous as Qingxiu approached. With skills like yours, you only want to be a guard to get a meal? What a waste. What's your name? The boy answered without thinking, my name is Gue. Why do you care? I can't even get a meal, what else is there to talk about? How rude. This lord is the Duke of Qing, how dare you be so disrespectful, a guard barked. The Duke of Qing? The boy looked at Qingxiu in disbelief. At once, he understood why his own gaze kept flickering, so this was the legendary Duke of Qing who couldn't see. Be bowing to Duke of Qing. He immediately knelt and saluted, his tone respectful and a bit flustered. Since leaving home, he had traveled to many villages, meeting all kinds of people. Most of them would gossip behind others' backs, mocking their flaws. But only when Qingxiu's name came up did everyone's eyes shine with admiration, and without fail, they spoke in praise. It wasn't just polite words, they genuinely respected and adored him from the heart. Although the boy was impulsive and loved to fight, he still had a basic sense of right and wrong. You just said, your name is Gue? Qingxiu's expression grew a bit playful as he studied the thin, ragged-looking boy. That name was one of great renown in the histories of the Tang, whether on the battlefields of Goguryeo or in the famed Three Arrows fixing Tianshan of the Northwest, it was recorded for all time. After the founding generals of the Tang had gradually passed, this man alone would hold up the latter half of the dynasty's glory. Yet now, it was hard to connect this scrawny boy with that future figure, until Qingxiu thought of the raw, unmatched strength he'd just seen. Then it all made sense. No need to bow, I hate it when people kneel to me. I heard that a few days ago, a young man in the northern village fought and knocked down 8 or 9 strong men. That was you. Yes, but I hadn't eaten that day, so I lost a bit of an edge in the fight. Gue pointed embarrassedly at the scars on his face. Since then, no village would take me in. I've been working odd jobs to eat, but it's hard to get by. I heard there was a big hot spring villa here, so I came to see if I could work as a guard. Qingxiu almost wanted to laugh aloud, especially at the thought of taking in this future famed general as just a guard. You pick fights everywhere you go, it's no wonder no one takes you in, a guard said unhappily. Bah! It's because they saw me take their jobs and wanted to drive me off, so I fought them. None of those bastards are good people. Gue said angrily. You want a place to eat? As it happens, I need some guards here. You can stay for now. Before Gue could rejoice, Qingxiu cut him down with another line. The first month, no pay, just room and board. In your free time, learn the rules. If you offend a guest, you'll work to pay for it. You should know, the guests here spend outrageous amounts. If you scare off one of them, and they never return. Duke of Qing, how much does one guest spend here? Qingxiu casually made a hand gesture. Understand? Got it, got it. Gue swallowed hard, he couldn't even dream of earning that much in his lifetime. All right, if you want to stay, stop talking and come back to the villa to change clothes. You start work tomorrow. And the medical expenses for the guards you injured just now will be deducted from your pay. Gue could only agree through gritted teeth. It was rare to find anyone willing to take him in, especially someone like the Duke of Qing. At least they'll feed me, he told himself. But Qingxiu underestimated his appetite. He had promised Gue a full meal first, but the boy sat down and devoured 7 big buns without pausing, urging them to bring more. Duke of Qing, you're truly a great man. I've been looking for meals everywhere lately, and no one has ever let me eat this well. Gue gulped down a big mouthful of porridge, face full of satisfaction, then stuffed in another bun. You've had it so rough outside, you never thought of going home? At least you wouldn't be sleeping in the open. Gue shook his head, speaking through a mouthful of bun. I have no home. When I was 13, my whole village caught the plague. My family all died, and I was the only one who escaped. I ended up wandering here to Guangzhou. As long as I can get a meal each day, I'll manage. These days, even eating is hard. Qingxiu thought for a moment. You never thought about joining the army? I'm too young, they wouldn't take me. That much was true. Since the empire had been unified, the court's military focus was on defending against external enemies. The criteria had shifted from numbers to quality, too old or too young, they didn't take. It was no longer like the chaotic days of the Central Plains, when anyone could be grabbed and sent to the army. For someone like Gue, who wasn't even 20 yet, instead of calling them up for military service, the court actually preferred that they marry quickly and have children to increase the population. That's enough for now. Qingxiu waved his hand. The guards beside him immediately understood and cleared away all the food from the table until it was completely bare. Hey, I'm only 60% full. Why are you taking it away? Gue reached for another bun, but Qingxiu caught his wrist with his chopsticks. That light, almost casual pinch instantly made Gue's whole arm go numb, leaving him unable to use any strength at all. If you want a full meal, work first. You've already eaten 3 people's share for breakfast, but you haven't even earned back the medical expenses yet. Qingxiu set down his chopsticks and said calmly. Ah, fine. As long as lunch is included. Gue stood up and tightened his belt. No matter what work it is, just tell me, whether it's splitting firewood, feeding horses, or heavy labor, I can do the work of 7 or 8 men alone. Good. You said it yourself. Qingxiu laughed loudly, then threw a glance at the guards beside him. Kid, come with me, there's something good waiting for you to do. Gue eagerly followed behind him, looking curiously around the hot spring villa as they went. Before he realized it, they had arrived at a wide training ground. Gue's eyes lit up when he saw the weapon rack nearby, full of all kinds of arms. He rushed forward, grabbed a heavy padao from the rack, and swung it a few times in the air. This knife is great. When I'm on guard duty, can I use this? It feels just right. When he turned around, he found himself surrounded by 6 burly, muscle-bound men who had appeared from who knows where. They were all smiling at him with ill intent, and Gue had a faint sense of unease. What, you plan to beat me up? Just you few? Gue wasn't afraid. In fact, he tightened his grip on the padao and challenged them. The Duke of Qing told us, you may be strong, but you have no martial training. If you only rely on brute force, there's no future for you. So we're here to teach you some skills. That way you'll be able to handle real work in the future. Otherwise, the Duke of Qing won't keep someone who just eats for free. Gue sneered. All right then, I'd like to see who's teaching who. Even if all 5 or 6 of you come at once, I've beaten 9 men before. Of course, he didn't know that each of these strong men was a household guard of the Duke of Qing, any one of whom could slaughter enemies on the battlefield, nothing like the villagers he had fought before. Come on then. With a roar, Gue charged forward without any technique, taking on all 6 at once. Naturally, within less than half a stick of incense, he was down on the ground, grimacing in pain. Again. Before sunset today, unless you knock all 6 of us down, you're not stopping. No lunch either? I'm afraid you won't even have the strength for dinner by then. Brothers, go! Qingxiu sat leisurely by the stream next to the training ground, humming a tune while fishing, though the occasional screams from Gue behind him were somewhat noisy. Unknowingly, after sending off wave after wave of visiting vassal kings, the first day of the new year was drawing near. With the year almost over, the court was busier than ever, calculating taxes and expenses. Everyone knew, if they didn't finish before the year's end, they'd be working overtime on New Year's Day. For of course, this was also one of the rare times he could rest, and he didn't want to carry unfinished matters into the new year. On the last morning court session before the festival, after dealing with the vassal king's affairs, ordered the Ministry of Revenue to read out this year's financial income. The officials already had a rough idea, but when they heard the string of unexpected figures, almost every one of them was stunned. In just 1 year, the Tang's revenue and national strength had increased so much compared to previous years. This is the result of all of you working together with me. Everyone here has a share of the credit. Of course, if we talk about the greatest credit, Duke of Qing stands above all. Lie's gaze, full of warmth, fell on Qingxiu, without hiding his praise. Naturally, no one envied Qingxiu, everyone knew he had reached this point purely by extraordinary ability. In fact, Lier was being modest, Qingxiu didn't just stand above all, he held the vast majority of the credit, more than everyone else combined. Your Majesty overpraises me. I've only done what is my duty, Qingxiu said calmly. With the year's end approaching, if any of you ministers have finished your work, you may return home after court. Although Lier said so, the ministers could only smile bitterly, none of them were close to finished. Especially Li Jing, having just pacified the northern Turks this year, the scattered tribes still needed to be reorganized, and even coming to Chang'an for court was a rare chance. If he went home on holiday, the entire northern steppe would fall into chaos. Distribute them. Lier waved his hand, and several eunuchs carried large jade trays down, carefully distributing gifts to the ministers. Recently, envoys came from the western trade routes. They claim to be from a great nation in the west, whose territory is no smaller than the Tangs. These are the tribute they brought. I found them rather novel, take them. In their country, these are valuable crafts. The gifts varied, and the closer a minister sat to the front, the more valuable the gift. Qingxiu received a gold object shaped like a date, about half the size of a palm, inlaid with various gemstones. It looked lifelike, exquisitely made, and had a distinctly foreign style. But the shape of this date was quite strange, very different from dates grown in the Central Plains. And the style of the gem inlay gave Qingxiu an odd impression. It seemed to carry a faint, exotic cumin-like flavor. Dates from the palm tree, Qingxiu blurted out. This was a specialty of Arabia. Duke of Qing, you recognize this? Li Er was drawn by his words. I thought this was just something they carved randomly, but it turns out it's actually one of their specialties. Qingxiu said thoughtfully, Your Majesty, the envoys who brought this must be from the Great Food Nation, right? The so-called Great Food Nation was the Arab Empire, coexisting with the Tang, equally strong, and eventually declining at the same time. If Qingxiu remembered correctly, at this time the Arab Empire should be the Abbasid Caliphate, the most powerful dynasty in ancient Arab history. When the Tang dynasty was at its peak, the Abbasid Caliphate was likewise a massive empire spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa. Although the two empires had little direct contact, their cultural and commercial exchanges were astonishingly frequent, and each was deeply influenced by the other's civilization. You guessed right, it is indeed the Great Food Nation. Ha, their clothing is quite interesting. Every man has a huge turban on his head, and they don't drink alcohol. Li Er vividly described the envoys from the Great Food Nation. But he didn't know that, down below, Qingxiu was thinking about something else entirely. At this time, the Abbasid Caliphate should have been newly established. If they were already sending envoys along the Silk Road, the western trade route, to the Tang, that meant they had already pacified their strongest surrounding enemies and were beginning to use trade to enrich their country. This could be a huge business opportunity. Qingxiu muttered to himself, already faintly planning to take over the entire Eurasian market. If he seized the chance, he might be able to flood the Great Food Nation, and even farther, still chaotic Europe in its dark ages, with his goods and influence. Of course, Li Er had no idea what Qingxiu was plotting. After announcing the end of court, Li Er specially ordered Sun Wuji, Qingxiu, and others to enter the palace later. Li Er had bought some exotic local products from these great food merchants and wanted them to take them home to enjoy. But as soon as Qingxiu entered the palace, he saw Li Er and Xiao Yu sitting face to face, scratching their heads. Standing nearby, Chang Sun Wuji, Fang Xianling, and the rest were all watching intently, no one speaking to break the silence. Got it. Li Er suddenly became excited, moving his hands over the table as if demonstrating something. A moment later, Qingxiu heard Xiao Yu sigh in regret. I shouldn't have made that move just now. Ah, Your Majesty wins. Haha. Sure one, you have to give me back all the winnings from before. Let's play again. Let's do it. The two rolled up their sleeves, eager to start, looking nothing like the solemn ruler and minister they had been in court earlier, more like two old men playing in the street. What are you two? Qingxiu stepped closer and saw they were playing Chinese checkers. Yes, the same Chinese checkers Qingxiu had invented and put in the hot spring villa for entertainment. Duke of Qing is here? Sit for a while, let us finish this round. Li Er moved a piece and said with a grin, some days ago, Sherwin went to the hot spring villa, found this Chinese checkers interesting, and brought it back. When I tried it, I got hooked, haha. Xiao Yu noticed Qingxiu's gaze and looked a bit embarrassed. I spent some silver to buy it from those people, nothing else, I just thought it was fun. Of course. This isn't the only thing I invented, there's also Ghost and God Kill, For Nations Kill, Big Landlord, and so on. They're even more fun than this. If you want to buy one, just ask at the counter, only 4 yen a set. What? Xiao Yu nearly jumped up. I thought you didn't allow these to be taken out, so I gave that attendant 10 taels of silver as hush money to get this set. Everyone almost burst out laughing, especially Li Er, who pretended to stroke his beard in thought just to hide his smile. Du Ruhui chuckled. Lord Xiao, next time you might as well just ask the Duke of Qing directly. Xiao Yu sighed. I thought these things were like the Duke of Qing's secret recipes, not shared with outsiders. Who knew? Ah. He didn't care about the money, only that he had been made a fool of. Little did he know, Qingxiu's purpose in creating these board games was precisely to spread them throughout Chang'an. The more players there were, the higher the popularity, creating a cycle that would make them fashionable across the Tang. Duke of Qing, you said you invented this? Li Er asked with interest. Do you have anything more fun than Chinese checkers? I'm already a master at it, haven't even been playing for half a day, and look, I've won quite a few chips. Following his pointing finger, Qingxiu realized that these chips were actually stacks of memorials on the table. One could only imagine how the officials would feel if they knew their memorials were being used as game tokens. As they spoke, Xiaoyu lost another game to Li Er, completely losing confidence. It wasn't that he was holding back because of their ruler-minister relationship, he was genuinely terrible at it. Your Majesty, since there are enough people here, why don't we play a round of Ghost and God Kill? Good. I've got half a day free today, let's relax a bit. Li Er, in high spirits from winning, said, My dear ministers, let's play a game together. Of course. If your Majesty is interested, we'd like to try it too. I've only heard of Ghost and God Kill, never played. Please teach us, your Majesty. Qingxiu looked at them with some surprise. These men usually hated wasting even a single word, always focused on efficiency. To finish all the documents in the morning is rare. The next batch won't arrive until the afternoon. Duke of Qing, since you've got nothing else after collecting the gifts, why not join us for 2 rounds? Since Li Er had said it, Qingxiu also felt a strange itch to play. Alright. Ghost and God Kill was a game Qingxiu had adapted from the later game Werewolf, adjusting the rules to suit the era. The fun hadn't diminished, in fact, with his tweaks, it had increased. When the villa had first opened, there had been a few young masters who usually spent all day in the brothels, but because of Ghost and God Kill, they stayed at the villa for 4 straight days, making people think they'd hit a sage phase. Of course, with Qingxiu himself, the rule-maker, playing, no matter how cunning the others were, they couldn't beat him. My son-in-law, you'd better watch out. I heard that lately Sherwan has been playing Ghost and God Kill at home with his servants and wins more than he loses. Changsun Wuji whispered a warning to Qingxiu. Coincidentally, I've never lost at this game. Qingxiu smiled faintly. Looked like today, he'd be teaching Xiaoyu a lesson in life. Sure enough, halfway through the very first game, Qingxiu, relying entirely on his precise control of the rules and his deep understanding of them, completely took the initiative in the match. Especially Xiaoyu, from his initial full confidence to, in the end, being forced by Qingxiu step by step until he nearly blurted out even his own bank's secret orders. In 3 straight games, Qingxiu won with no suspense at all, while Li Er and the others were drenched in sweat, without any real sense of fun from the game. Why is this game so hard? Li Er wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Clearly unwilling to accept it, he said, again. Your Majesty, are you sure? Qingxiu looked at him meaningfully. I don't mind winning a few more times, I'm just afraid if you lose too much, you won't be able to sleep tonight. Impossible. I've already figured out your style. Next round, you're definitely going to lose. Li Er called out, and after a moment of hesitation, everyone agreed to keep playing. They had just received local specialties from the great food nation from Li Er, only to lose them all in such a short time. Naturally they were unwilling to let it end like this. Come on. Just as they were about to start the next round, a eunuch stepped forward to report that Ho Junji had urgent military matters to present. Military matters? Li Er, who had just been eager for another match, immediately lost his composure at these words. As his expression turned serious, Changsun Wuji tactfully gathered the playing cards off the table, and everyone sat up straight. Let Ho Junji enter. A moment later, Ho Junji strode in quickly, holding a top-secret military memorial in his hands. Your Majesty, please review. Li Er's expression showed slight displeasure. News like this at this time probably meant that some small border tribes or kingdoms were trying to take advantage of the Tang's New Year, when border defenses might relax, to send troops raiding for supplies. But the situation in the report was completely unexpected. It said that a recent tribute mission from Shache, Yarkand, had been attacked on its return journey, just after leaving Tang territory. They were followed and ambushed by Tuyuhan forces from the Heshi corridor, who robbed them of all the rewards they had received, and nearly killed the entire group. If not for one man escaping in the chaos to alert the Tang border troops in time, they might all have died there, turning into mummified corpses with no one knowing. By the time Tang troops set out to rescue them, they found only a field of corpses. The Tuyuhan had long since fled. Li Er set down the memorial, his face turning extremely dark. Although those killed were not Tang citizens, they were still an official tribute mission. And Shache had always been loyal to the Tang. Even at the founding of the dynasty, they had immediately pledged allegiance, without a trace of disloyalty. Killing them meant slapping the Tang in the face. If this was not handled properly, the states of the western regions would inevitably, under Tuyuhan's intimidation, hesitate to maintain close ties with the Tang. In the long run, they might grow disloyal. Duke of Lu, have the local garrisons find an opportunity in the coming days to raid the Tuyuhan, and send all the severed heads to Shache. Li Er threw down the memorial with instructions. Before Ho Junji could answer, Qingxiu casually picked up the document and, ahead of him, said, "Your Majesty, such a rare opportunity, you're going to waste it just like that?" At these words, both Li Er and Ho Junji were stunned. But as soldiers, they quickly understood what Qingxiu meant by opportunity. "Duke of Lu, please fetch me a map." A young eunuch hurried to clear the table, and soon a map was spread across it. Everyone shifted their mindset from playing games back into that of the Tang's top strategists. Tuyuhan lies beyond the Tang's northwest frontier. To the south, they can threaten the Hhuang region. To the north, they can press into the Heshi corridor. In other words, they can cut off our link to the western regions at any time. Now that the Tang's borders are stable, the 16 states of the western regions, and even the distant Great Food Nation, are also relatively stable internally. For at least the next 30 years, the Heshi corridor will surely remain a triple artery of trade. Qingxiu circled these key points on the map, then looked at Li Er. No further words were needed. Such an important trade route could not be left under threat from a volatile, hostile Tuyuhan. For the Tang, this was absolutely unacceptable. The best, indeed the only, option was to wipe Tuyuhan completely off the map. The territory they occupied was not some barren, worthless land. Beyond the critical Heshi corridor, it was also part of the Yellow River Basin, with arable land capable of producing crops suitable for relocating farmers there for long-term control. Even without the Tuyuhan threat, any land on Tang's periphery whose output could offset the cost of occupying it was worth taking. An empire in its rising phase must seize every piece of reachable land, to prolong its growth period as much as possible. Li Er understood this well. "I've disliked the Tuyuhan for a long time." Li Er casually picked up a game piece and placed it on the Tuyuhan's position on the map. That small movement made his meaning clear without another word. "Your Majesty, Tuyuhan pretends loyalty but continually commits petty raids, never reforming. I believe the Duke of Qing is absolutely right. Yes, even just for the sake of securing Tang's borders, they must be eradicated. And Tuyuhan also has an important salt production site. Although their green salt isn't as fine as Tang's refined salt, taking it would deny surrounding enemies access to it, further strengthening our monopoly." The discussion flowed, each man speaking with animation. But they didn't need to say much more. From the moment Qingxiu made his suggestion, Li Er had already made up his mind. The destruction of Tuyuhan must be considered carefully. It cannot be rushed, but it must be done. Li Er nodded. "I had been thinking about next year's moves. At first I considered starting in the northeast. But now, it seems we should first secure the areas around the capital before considering more distant plans." His meaning was already clear. Next year, preparations would begin to destroy Tuyuhan. "Your Majesty has great foresight. In my view, to shield Chang'an, we must first pacify the Hhuang and Heshi corridor regions. And to secure those two areas, we must control the entire situation in the 16 states of the western regions, cutting off all contact between them and the surrounding tribes. That way, the Tang can remain secure for the long term." In just a few words, Qingxiu had once again widened Li Er's strategic vision. Li Er was once again struck by Qingxiu's foresight. If this plan could be fully completed, the Tang dynasty would have vast buffer zones around its borders, and any potential threats would be reduced to small forces, incapable of posing a major danger. Only then could the empire truly rest easy. Excellent foresight. Li Er laughed heartily, then rolled up the map. "Everyone may withdraw for now. Let me think this over carefully. After the Lantern Festival, I will personally write a border pacification strategy for you all to see." Just moments ago, Li Er had been thinking about resting, but Qingxiu's beautiful vision had completely reignited his interest. It seemed this night would be another sleepless one for him. After leaving the palace, Qingxiu had not gone far when he suddenly heard someone calling him from behind. "Duke of Qing, wait! Haha, why leave in such a hurry?" Turning around, he saw it was Ho Junji, smiling broadly as he hurried over. From his expression, it seemed he had no idea that the matter of Ho Yuanhing was connected to Qingxiu. That boy had clearly kept his mouth shut tight. "Does the Duke of Lu have business with me? Since the last time you came to my residence to buy land, we haven't had the chance to talk much. Could I have the honor of inviting you to my home later for a drink? Since there's no court tomorrow, even if the Duke of Qing honors me with a few cups, I won't mind." Thinking of Ho Yuanhing, Qingxiu couldn't help but feel disgust. "Better not. I still have matters to deal with later and won't have time." But Ho Junji's smile didn't fade. "No rush. Whenever you have time, we can meet. If the Duke of Lu has something to say, you might as well say it directly. If it's something I can't do, then you won't need to waste your time arranging a banquet." Qingxiu's directness caught Ho Junji slightly off guard. In that case, since you're a straightforward man, I'll speak plainly. Ho Junji lowered his voice and leaned in. You also saw just now, His Majesty has made up his mind to campaign against the Tuyuhan. If they can be subdued, it will be a great merit in court. Last time, when the Turks were destroyed, the enormous rewards given to Li Jing and Qingxiu had been seen by all. Everyone had envied them greatly. Opportunities for such monumental achievements were rare, and Tuyuhan was now such an opportunity. If the Duke of Qing could put in a good word for me so I might receive this campaign, I would be extremely grateful, and I would be sure to credit you with the greater part of the achievement. Qingxiu thought to himself, so that's what he was here for. It seemed he had guessed right. This time, Li Er's first choice to lead would likely still be Li Jing, who was fully capable of the task. As for Ho Junji? It wasn't that Qingxiu doubted his ability. If he commanded the campaign against Tuyuhan, victory was almost certain. But Li Jing's daughter, Li Qieying, was bound to marry Qingxiu sooner or later. With that connection, helping him win the command was understandable. And Ho Junji's connection to him? If one had to force a link, it was only through Ho Yuanheng. Ho Junji kept smiling. You don't have to answer right away. This is something you can take your time to consider. We'll speak of it later. Good. And in the future, if you ever need help with something, just say the word. If I can do it, I will. Ho Junji left cheerfully, and Qingxiu simply pushed the matter from his mind. As he left the Forbidden City, a cold wind blew in his face. He instinctively raised his sleeve to block it. But the wind was not as bitter as he expected, it was tolerable. He suddenly realized, this winter didn't seem very cold. It hadn't snowed much, and the snow that had fallen just a few days ago had already melted quickly. It didn't feel like winter at all. On the streets, some of the poorer commoners weren't even wearing padded clothes, just a few thin layers as they walked about. This isn't a good sign. Qingxiu frowned as he thought about it, slowly walking toward his carriage to return home. Soon came the last night of the year, New Year's Eve. After working hard all year, both the common people and the court finally had one last night to rest. It was one of the rare nights when the curfew in Chang'an was lifted. Every household hung large red lanterns at their doors, celebrating through the night. Shops stayed open without pause, bustling with customers. Children who usually went to bed early were now all on the streets, carrying lanterns and playing noisily. Even the foreign residents of Chang'an joined in the festivities. And within the Duke of Qing's mansion, the celebrations were even livelier. Dozens of banquet tables where the household guards and servants drank heartily, some even singing loudly. Shuiren Gui was focused solely on eating, praising the mansion's cooks for being even better than those at the hot spring villa. While the courtyard banquet was filled with noise, Qingxiu was in the back garden with his wives, enjoying wine under the moonlight in peace. Sisters, I'm with child now, so I can't drink, I'll toast you with tea instead. Husband works hard outside. You must all help me take good care of him at home, and also, at night, be careful not to overdo it. Though Su Xiaochun said this seriously, her words made the other wives blush. Don't worry, elder sister, there's no way we could tire him out. If anything, he's the one who nearly drains us all dry, Li Yuchan laughed softly. That may be, but before you were with child, you didn't hold back more than we do. Elder sister you, tell us more. Yes, I want to hear too. They all spoke at once, making Su Xiaochun's cheeks flush as she cast a reproachful glance at Qingxiu, her eyes seeming to say, it's all your fault. Heaven knows, what does this have to do with me? Qingxiu thought to himself. I'm getting blamed for nothing. All right, my ladies, it's almost midnight. Qingxiu cut into their laughter. On this rare New Year's Eve, I have something nice to share with you all, watch closely. He clapped his hands, and the servants who had been waiting in the garden lit the fuses of fireworks that had been prepared in advance. Fireworks. Hearing the familiar crackling, Changsun Pingting clapped happily. I knew my husband would have prepared plenty of fireworks for tonight. That's true, but these aren't the usual kind. Just watch. Qingxiu looked toward the sky, the rising firework shells reflecting bright sparks in his eyes. Whoosh! Pop! The crisp explosions of fireworks rang out, accompanied by blazing lights shooting into the night sky. At that moment, whether it was the household guards drinking and chatting in the courtyard, the residents strolling the streets of Chang'an, or even Li Er in the imperial palace dining with Empress Changsun and the princes, all eyes turned toward the fireworks rising into the sky, about to burst. Crackle, bang! The fireworks exploded, but this time, they didn't just scatter into random sparkling dots. Instead, in the instant they burst, the flames formed clearly visible, orderly patterns in the sky, recognizable characters. Peace and prosperity for the nation. Li Er instantly saw the four-colored characters formed in the air, his eyes widening in shock. Fireworks that could form words in the sky, and those words struck straight at his heart. Though the characters quickly faded, the sense of shock and joy they brought him lingered. Then came many other auspicious phrases: peace and joy, may all go well, a bountiful harvest, and more. The people on the streets stared at the sky. After their initial astonishment, they broke into thunderous applause and cheers. Duke Qing is a genius, he can even make fireworks form words in the sky. Such a lavish gift for the new year, Duke Qing must have spent a fortune. Word fireworks. Word fireworks. I want to set some off too. Too bad I can't afford them, otherwise I'd put on a display like this for my family. It's amazing. This is the true New Year's spirit. Duke Qing made this year's celebration perfect. The fireworks continued for the time it takes an incense stick to burn, but even after they ended, the crowd was reluctant to take their eyes from the sky. That New Year's Eve, everyone felt deep gratitude toward Qingxiu, from the commoners to Li Er in the palace. He had given them a completely different kind of New Year. Even if they saw fireworks every year after, none could compare to the wonder of this night. Just after the start of the first lunar month, while people across the Tang Empire were still celebrating, the entourage of the Prince of Lingnan, after a long, bumpy, day and night journey, finally returned to its capital, Honghe City. As soon as they entered the city, Feng Ang rushed the palace physicians to treat Feng Jidai. The young man had been barely clinging to life to begin with, and the rough travel had left him with only a single breath. When Feng Jidai saw the familiar palace, he nearly wept with emotion. He had left here in high spirits, accompanying his father to the capital for tribute, whole in body, no, proud and arrogant in all 5 limbs. Now he returned broken, neither fully human nor ghost, his life hanging by a thread. Father! You must avenge me! I want that Qingxiu to spend the rest of his life lying in bed like me, worse than me. Tears streaming, Feng Jidai turned his head toward his father. Don't worry. Even without you saying it, I will make Qingxiu pay. What are you all staring at? Wipe my son's tears. Feng Ang's other sons came rushing to greet him. When they learned Feng Jidai was crippled, they were inwardly overjoyed. This was their chance. But they all put on mournful faces, pretending to weep loudly. Elder brother. How could you be beaten like this? That bastard who did this will die a horrible death. He will be struck by heaven's wrath, even lightning would be too kind. Don't be too sad, brother. Even if you can't move your limbs, you can still lead Lingnan to grow strong with your mind and wisdom. Brother, why did this happen, Wu? Feng Jidai watched their fake sobbing without expression. Of course he knew they were acting. But what could he do? Feng Ang, on the other hand, was deeply provoked by their wailing, and he too began sobbing loudly, ignoring attempts to calm him. That damn Qingxiu. If I can't kill him to avenge my son, won't the Prince of Lingnan become a laughingstock among all the other lords? And the court is so corrupt. My poor son was beaten like this, and they haven't even apologized. Feng Ang brushed away his tears and roared, summon all the ministers of the realm to my palace. Within 2 hours. My lord, isn't that too hasty? It's not yet the 15th of the month, and the ministers are still at home resting. If we summon them suddenly, they may not make it in time. Some ministers don't even live in the capital, they won't make it in 2 hours. Their protests died under Feng Ang's murderous glare. We understand. Feng Ang added furiously, if they can't make it in 2 hours, they'll be demoted 3 ranks and fined half a year's salary. My son is wounded like this, and I've been rushing back since the first day of the year, and they think they can still rest? Everyone present was stunned. They were used to Feng Ang's occasional outbursts, but causing such a scene in the New Year's season showed how deeply he'd been provoked. Wu, father is so wronged. The princes all cried louder, this time deliberately flattering their father. Feng Ang's eyes filled again. Good children, Wu. In the palace, the hastily gathered ministers sat patiently, listening to Feng Ang rant and rave. All of them cursed him in their hearts. What was this nonsense in the middle of the new year? Couldn't it wait until after the holiday? Of course, no one dared say it aloud, they only feigned deep grief and agreed with him. After venting, Feng Ang calmed slightly. You may think I'm irrational, but in all my life, I have never been more rational and clear-headed than I am today. The court is unjust to Lingnan, even despises us. So why should Lingnan remain loyal and bow to them? These words shocked the drowsy ministers wide awake. They stared at the enraged Prince of Lingnan, hardly believing their ears. My lord, you can't say such things recklessly. If there's a problem, we can discuss it slowly, don't act on impulse. Yes, this is the Tang court. Even if the verdict was unjust, you can still petition His Majesty for a retrial. Feng Ang had expected these useless words. He didn't listen to a single one. My mind is made up. Any who oppose me will be stripped of office and made commoners. Starting today, you need not come to the palace again.
Did you enjoy the story, guys? I hope you did. Support this video with a like and a comment. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.